Chapter 15 Tori Uchiha. I winced watching what I had set loose onto an unsuspecting Konoha. After searching for Sasuke for a while in the old-fashioned way, I made a not-so-empathetic decision and loosed his fangirls after him. If anyone could find a brooding Uchiha, it was Yamanaka Ino and Haruno Sakura, closely followed by 20 or 30 other admirers. Watching the dust clouds settle, the only sign of their being there, I immediately regretted freeing them. Out of respect for my oldest enemy, rival, friend, and brother, I activated my Eyes of Death, wanting to practice their abilities as I searched for the embittered 7-year-old. Glancing quickly across the village, I felt my enhanced hearing ringing with voices. Once they had quieted some, I tried to look for Sasuke once more. Again the voices screamed in my ears. I winced but tried to triangulate the source. Not seeing anyone close to me, I had a crazy idea. What if? Across the park I saw Ayam walking back to a Chiraku ramen, her arms filled with bags of groceries. Concentrating, I directed my eyes to her. She paused for a second before continuing on her way, shaking her head. It had a different reaction to me though. I still don't understand why I'm the one that has to go get the groceries. I can make the ramen just as good as Chuchi. Then again, I'm sure Naruto and Aizen would notice the difference. Ayam's thoughts drifted in and out of my head, her lips unmoving. I stood shocked as I realized just what happened. I had discovered another of Shinomi's side effects. I shook my head, changing my eyes to the simpler Akuma no Mi to search for Sasuke. When I spotted him, a piece of my heart broke. Crying into his hands, Sasuke sat in his old bedroom in the Uchiha compound. Sasuke? I asked, flanked by Hina-chan. After finding the Uchiha, I let him have some time to compose himself. If there was anything I knew about Sasuke, both new and old, was that he didn't not want to appear weak. At any cost, he'd put an indifferent smirk on his face and insult anyone within 3 feet just to shift attention away from him so he could mourn or suffer in silence. Instead of whipping his head towards me, Sharingan blazing as I had expected, Sasuke nodded quietly and leaned forward, his elbows on his knees as he stared at the wall in front of him. Sasuke? I repeated in uncharted territory. I paused, waiting for his reply. The silence thickened as I stood waiting, wondering what I was going to say next. I prayed for a miracle, but like so many other prayers I sent to Shinigami Kami and any other gods, there was no reply from them. Hina-chan stood by my side, the silence and the sense of anxiety rippling through our joint seal. I was about to repeat myself when I heard his voice, quiet but determined. If all we do is kill, then we're no better than Itachi. Let me ask you, Naruto, where do you draw the line? The line separating us and Itachi, where does it fall? You've told me that you train to protect, that's your Nindo. What did Itachi train for? What drove him to become so strong and then tear everything apart? Sasuke said, not a trace of defeat in his voice. I paused, going over my wording. I once told you to look at Konoha. To just watch as all of Konoha worked in balance. That wasn't my idea. An old friend of mine used to lay on the grass all day just watching the clouds go by as the world passed around him. I chuckled, remembering the many times Shikamaru was told to get moving in preparation for battle. He always called it troublesome, saying he had no time for the clouds. When I began to listen and started watching myself, I learned that everything has a balance to it. There will always be a poor and rich status quo. That is all we as humans know, so it's all we'll ever know. There will always be one man wanting more than he deserves and another that has more than his fair share. Balance doesn't mean equality, it means peace in the midst of chaos. What does that have to do with anything? Sasuke yelled. Hina-chan took a step forward and I put my arm in front of her, protecting Sasuke from her wrath. I smirked lightly towards her, thinking loudly that she needs to remember the differences between both Sasukes. She narrowed her eyes but nodded, rocking back onto her heels. Balance, I answered, trying not to give too much away. The more powerful I grow, the harder you and I train, the weaker Itachi will become. If we tip the scales in our favor, we can bring him down that much easier. Kakashi is right, I probably could defeat Itachi right now. I'm not worried about losing to your brother, I'm worried about the innocent people we'll hurt and the damage we'll cause before it's finally over. So you're going to stand by and watch while he walks away? No. I'm going to train. I'm going to fail the academy and graduate as the dead last. That way when we meet Itachi he won't know what hit him, I said, trying to seem logical to Sasuke. He thought for a while before looking up, confusion in his dark eyes. You're going to go through with the academy? Why? If you're so strong, why are you going through the motions? Because I struck a deal with the Hokage, I smirked, thinking back on the last conversation I had with Sarutobi Hiruzen. Flashback Ojaizen. I shouted into the Hokage's office, interrupting a mission report. The female jounin jumped, staring out the window. Jumping down from my vantage point on the ceiling, I looked over her shoulder. What are you looking at? I whispered, the jounin jumping once more and whirling around kunai in hand. Izoki, I'd appreciate it if you didn't gut the Yondame's kid, no matter how much he may deserve it, Hiruzen said, chuckling wearily. What brings you here, Naruto? I need to talk to you alone, I hinted. Hiruzen shook his head slowly and cleared his throat. I'm sorry, Izoki. It seems I have something I must attend to. If there was anything, please tell me later, the Sandame said, glancing at the jounin before turning his eyes to me. The jounin sighed before glancing in my direction, nodding respectfully at the Sandame and exiting the room, closing the door with a gentle thud. So he began, turning to me. What is this about? I want you to make me a jounin, I said. Hiruzen's eyes widened slightly before he chuckled. You don't beat around the bush, do you? No. There's more to it though. I'm going to fail the academy twice. Don't put in a good word for me with Iruka and let Mizuki do his own thing. I need to maintain the timeline as much as possible. That's why I gave Itachi every bit of his other life. I knew the more that is the same, the more I can change for the better. You don't want the promotion now? I know you're strong enough to back it up, Hiruzen said, glancing pointedly at my weights. I know. I have a plan though, I grinned. As I explained my plan as well as its reasoning, a smile grew on the Hokage's aged features. Are you sure that's a good idea? Even I admit that Sasuke's face would be something to see, but how do you know that won't encourage him to leave? Because I know this Sasuke as well as I knew the last, at least at the end. This Sasuke will be driven more easily if he understood just how powerful I am compared to him. What of the Chunin exams? I can always sit on the sidelines. Maybe you could order me to patrol the Forest of Death for any suspicious activity. Gaara will always be in the inside if I need. If you say so, I still don't. I trust Gaara with my life, Sandame. You may be my friend and predecessor, but I shall not hesitate to defend him. To my surprise, Hiruzen only chuckled, rolling his eyes slowly. You are admirably loyal to your friends, Naruto. No one can deny that. I was only going to say that I don't trust him not to kill Orochimaru the moment he enters Suna. Gaara may be Ichibi's vessel, but he does not possess his bloodthirst, much to Shikaku's dismay. On top of that, Gaara knows to leave Orochimaru to the two of us. Changing the timeline again, I see? You were up against the Shodame and the Naidame on top of Orochimaru. If I keep the two former Hokage busy, you won't be as distracted while you battle Hibi team. Is that it, or did you want to hang around and terrify the Umbu coming by later? Hiruzen chuckled, shaking his head. I widened my eyes and brightened my smile. The idiot grinned back on my whiskered face. Can I? Please? Dismissed Rokudame-sama. Hiruzen smirked lightly, laughing under his breath. As you wish, Sandame-sama, I said, mock bowing. I chuckled as an Umbu entered the room, announced by a secretary. Are you sure I can't dismiss Naruto? Go bother Kakashi. End flashback. What kind of deal? Sasuke seemed a mix of surprise and curiosity. His favorite kind of deal. Whatever happens, he wins. Hina-chan smirked, punching me lightly on the arm. I smiled in return. Either way, I'm in a position to help you get stronger even if you hate how I said. I was nothing if not cryptic. Sasuke looked confused but quickly hid it behind a smirk. So what happens now? What always happens, I disappear for a few hours, you find me in the middle of training, I begin to drive you into the dirt due to my methods, and we eventually call it a day and head back to Kakashi's. What about Academy? Always ruining my fun, aren't you, Hinata-chan? I'll see you there, I guess. I'm going to check on something. Sorry, Sasuke. No tagging along this time, I said, my thoughts going back to Uchiha Tori. Sasuke huffed but turned, exiting his old bedroom. Hinata-chan looked at his back with concern but let him go. Hina-chan? Can you find my clone and tell him to resume his assignment? I need to tell a little bird some bad news and I'm afraid I'll be a while. I'm also going to go back to Gaara, I've been gone too long already. Hina-chan nodded slowly before pulling me into a tight hug. She gave me a sad smile, turning on her heel and following Sasuke out of the door. Hidden away in the noble district, the Namikaze compound stood tall, surrounded by training fields and woods. Standing near the entrance was the main house, the Namikaze Manor. Who's there? A startled female voice echoed in the abandoned Namikaze Manor. The ground spread out in all directions, encompassing an estate large enough to compete with the Uchiha and Hyuga compounds. I walked further into the house, my house, following the voice to the main bedroom. Walking into the room, I saw Tori huddled in the corner. It's okay, Tori-chan, it's only me, I said, my voice low. A flurry of movement and I was tackled in a hug. Naruto-kun. What's going on? I've been here all week. The foxes outside wouldn't let me leave. I don't know, Tori-chan, you need to listen to me. There's been a tragedy in Konoha, I mumbled, separating myself from the young Uchiha Chunin. What kind of tragedy? Tori asked, her eyes wide and trusting. I felt a surge of uneasiness go through me. How was I going to tell this girl that I had stood by as her boyfriend killed her family and friends? The Uchiha, they're all gone dead. You and Sasuke are the only left in Konoha, I said truthfully. Tori didn't seem to understand what I said, her eyes narrowed in confusion. Tori-chan, I'm sorry. Everyone, your friends, your parents, they're gone. I was out with Sasuke training. We came back to the Uchiha compound and found everyone dead in the streets. I couldn't do anything to help. Grasping my words, Tori let me go, stumbling backwards. Her obsidian eyes widened in shock and she fell to her knees. Her mouth moved incoherently and I instinctively moved towards her, desperate to help the grieving girl. I knelt next to her, placing a hand on her shoulder before pulling her into a hug. We sat there for what felt like forever. Just when she began to calm down, she seemed to remember something. Itachi-kun? He wasn't among the dead. We don't know what happened to him. He was Danzo decided to declare him an international missing nin. Sarutobio Jisen was against it, but even he couldn't go against the elders and the council. Needless to say, my words did little to calm the grieving Uchiha. She sat sobbing into my shoulder until the sun began to set. The sun disappearing behind Hokage Mountain, she wiped her eyes before studying me. She chuckled weakly under her breath. I glanced down at myself and found my civilian outfit striped with tears. Sorry about your shirt, it's okay. I'm not going anywhere, I chuckled in return, smiling tightly at the girl. She smiled weakly and glanced around the room. Where am I exactly? Tori glanced around the room before taking a seat on the bed. I sat beside her and she put her head on my shoulder. The most exact response would be in my parents' bedroom. This is the Namikaze Manor. Really? It's nice, Tori said, trying to find a compliment for the old home. It's dead, I corrected. I'm going to be moving back here as soon as Ojaizen lets me. Kakashi's was great when I was younger, but sharing a room with Sasuke is going to get old fast. Sasuke lives with you? Torai asked, surprised. Yeah, I couldn't let him live there. Not after you know. We found his parents in the living room. I couldn't let him stay there by himself. He wouldn't have been by himself if the foxes surrounding the place had let me go, Tori said, rolling her eyes. Yeah, sorry about that. I told them to keep you safe. I should have known that they'd take that to an extreme. You told them? What happened to no foxes in Konoha? They can't kick these foxes out. They're my summons. You have the fox summoning contract? You're 7. Need I remind you that there have been a number of prodigies in my generation as of now? Considering whom my parents were, I'd be surprised if I wasn't this strong. My mother Uzumaki Kushina, the second Kyuubi Jinchuriki, and a few Injutsu master even among the Uzumaki clan. My father Namikaze Minato, Konoha's Yellow Flash Yondaime Hokage, and the seal master behind Kyuubi's current imprisoning. You're really enjoying this, aren't you, Kit? You know it, Q. So you are a self-proclaimed prodigy, hold the fox summoning contract, and eventually want to move back into your family's home. Anything I missed? I don't think so. What are you going to do now? I don't know. I'm not sure if I can go back to the compound. I'll probably just get my own place and start back with my ninja career. I nodded and we continued talking. After a long silence, I glanced over at Tori, now asleep on my shoulder. I smiled and lifted the girl from my shoulder and laying her down in a more comfortable position. She shifted in her sleep before curling up. I laid a blanket over her form before moving to the hallway. I let out a low whistle, gathering my summons. 3 mortal foxes met me. Good evening, Naruto-sama. Is something the matter? Ryu asked, glancing at the closed door behind me. Nothing is wrong. I'm here to tell you that there is no more need to guard Torai-chan. Thank you for being so diligent. I smiled at the foxes. 2 of the foxes nodded respectfully and disappeared in a cloud of smoke. Ryu remained, a teasing light in his eyes. Sue, he exaggerated. Does Hinata-sama know? Just go back to your mate, Ryu. I could say the same to you, Naru-sama, he said, smirking as he walked away. His tail swished with each step, the vibrant orange dancing in the low light. He walked to the window at the end of the hall, jumping out without a glance. My senses spreading out, I located my Hiraishin seal. I sent a chakra pulse, a warning that I was coming through. I waited a moment, then traveled my chakra through the empty space between myself and my seal. I opened my eyes to a new camp. The grassy fields of the Konoha-Suna border were gone, replaced by rocky crags and mountains in the distance. I saw Gaara stand from a dying fire and approach me. I chuckled, watching him pocket a kunai that he had drawn. Staying vigilant, I see? We had to, Gaara said, motioning to the 2 demons and Kitsune. Pyrai was in her human form, shifting out of a defensive crouch as she too lowered a kunai. Kyuubi in his human form smirked at the exchange. Took you long enough, Kyu chuckled, his voice deep and ringing. Did you rescue the weasel's bird? No need to talk in code, Q. Torai should be safe. And still cooking, I said, remembering the information that I had gotten from Jiraiya in my past. Gaara's eyes narrowed in confusion and I laughed louder. She has buns in the oven. Don't beat around the bush. Cub, she's having kits. Gaara's confusion melted at Kyuubi's clarification. Oh, he said quietly. Yep. We didn't find out in the last timeline until after the original Uchiha massacre. It was too late to save her. Itachi never knew, I said sadly. Gaara's eyes widened. Massacre? In the original timeline, my past Uchiha Itachi murdered his entire clan aside from his younger brother Sasuke all in one night. In this timeline he killed his entire clan minus Sasuke and his girlfriend Uchiha Tori. And you let him do it? I did. The Uchiha massacre was an integral point in my past. Without it, everything I know could be wrong. Aside from that, Itachi knew of what happened in the last timeline, everything he did starting the moment that Danzo ordered the kill. He knows what he's doing. I finished sitting down in front of the fire and poking it with a stick. I hope so, Gaara said, reminding me of the old Gaara standing over Matsuri holding a newborn baby with vibrant red hair, wishing for the war to be over soon for his son. Lost in my memories, I was only broken out of my trance as I saw a small hand invade my field of vision. What? I said, trying to register what had been said. What were you remembering? I can't tell you, it'll change your future and your perception of today, I said, trying not to be cryptic. What, did I get married or something? Gaara laughed. And had a son, I said, serious. The effect was instantaneous. Gaara fell backwards, thankfully aware from the fire. Shikaku released, and the size of a mortal raccoon grinned evilly. This cub might get interesting, Shikaku growled warningly. Shikaku shrugged his shoulders and jumped onto a rock and lying down comfortably. It's strange, Shika, you get offended each time someone calls you cute and then go and curl up on a rock looking rather adorable, if I may say so myself, I chuckled. The mighty Shikaku lifted his head and glared at me wearily. Shut it, Kit. Chapter 16. Back to Suna. Blinking against the sunlight, I took off my fox mask and turned to Gaara. The year of training had passed quickly, turning Gaara into someone I was proud of. It's strange, 1 year later and it still looks the same. Gaara mused, staring at the village in the distance. Suna was exactly how we left it, if not worse for wear. Yeah, I agreed. Shikaku glanced at the village before turning his eyes to his summoner Gaara. My mind turned to that moment about 6 months ago when Gaara had finally gained the raccoon's respect, single-handedly destroying a troop of mist ninjas, including one of the legendary swordsmen, all to save a young girl named Suki. After discovering that her parents had already escaped, the ninja Suki had left our small troop. Using a strange bloodline limit, she kept in contact with us, using the ability to speak to and manipulate wild animals. I wonder how Temari and Kankuro are doing. I haven't seen them in so long, Gaara said, smiling as he remembered his siblings' antics. Don't worry, I'm sure Temari and Sandstorm kept Kankuro in line. And Sandstorm wouldn't let anyone touch Temari. Foxes are too loyal, I smiled in return, thinking fondly of the blonde Kunoichi and the makeup-wearing puppeteer. Temari should be a genin by now, maybe Kankuro too. I don't know too much about your life before the Chunin exams. Gaara just nodded and pulled his raccoon mask back onto his face, the scarlet rings around the eyes contrasting heavily with the green of his eyes and the white base of the mask. The black whiskers were not as defined as mine, but were prominent enough to exaggerate the animalistic grin on the mask. I smirked and put my own mask back on. My mask was in the form of a fox, the ears longer and more angled than a cat's. The face did not have a white base like most Dumbu masks, and Gaara's mask, mine, was yellow, matching my hair. The whiskers were a deep scarlet that matched Q's fur. Black swirls ran behind the whiskers and faded as they went upwards toward the tips of the ears. Are you ready to go? Yes, let's do this, Gaara said, his voice determined. I chuckled, knowing that my Nindo had rubbed off onto the young redhead. Are we going to go for the subtle approach? Or are we bombing the village and shining into the Kazekage's office? Pyrai, looking as young as ever, asked me, staring at the village with expectation. Neither. We're going to walk right in. Hopefully we'll be taken before the Kazekage. If not, I'm sure Temari can get us an appointment with the team. Naruto Taicho, he's still my father. And a bastard, I countered. I know you hate thinking badly about anyone, but what that man did to you, keep in mind he hasn't had the chance to do most of that in this timeline, Naruto. Remember, you more or less kidnapped me? Would you rather I left you in Suna? I'm not complaining, I'm just saying that you should give him the benefit of the doubt. He still sent Yashimaru after you. And Shika killed him. Kyuubi-sama scared the hell out of my father. He won't try anything, Gaara promised. I still wasn't sold, but I nodded and began to run towards Sunagara and the demons close behind. Kazekage-sama. There is an intruder in the village. A sand umbu shouted, running into the Kazekage's office. Gaara's father jumped slightly at the entrance before regaining his calm and collected facade. Who is the intruder? Reports say that it is the Kiroi Kitsune and the Iraguma, the umbu said. The Yondaime Kazekage nearly shook at the sound of the two ninjas' name, one of which being an S-ranking ninja and the other an A-rank and his own son. Bring them to me, he ordered. I chuckled and let myself fall off the ceiling. No need to team. Dismissed, umbu. I'm not here to kill anyone, I said, smirking behind my mask. The umbu glared at me through his mask and took a step towards me, drawing a kunai. I yawned and put a hand on the katana I kept slung across my back. I didn't come here to get violent, umbu-san. However, if you push me, I will not hesitate to cut off Kazekage team's head and send you to your family in a body bag. I'm not a violent person, but I have less friendly companions, I said. Where is Gaara? At his name, the redhead dropped into the room, flying in through the window. A shape flew in behind him, a large raccoon about 3 feet tall. Shikaku. Hello, father, Gaara said, taking off his mask. Well, Iraguma, you've been busy. What were you and the infamous Yellow Fox doing in Iwa? They weren't very happy. Neither was Kumokiri or AIM. I can't speak for Konoha, we haven't been there yet, but Wave was very happy to see us. As for what we were doing, that's not for you to know. All that aside, I'm a man of my word. I told you that I'd train Gaara for a year or so. 1 year has passed and here is your son as promised. I trust you to not attempt anything. Gaara does know how to contact me if he ever needs me. You're just going to give him back? The Yondaime Kazekage asked, incredulous. I knew you were stupid, but Kami. Give me a break, I complained, unwilling to explain myself. I'm honorable. I only did what you and Suno were too stupid or busy to do. I trained him to befriend Shikaku, as I told you in the letter my furry friend delivered. I believe you remember Kyuubi? I asked rhetorically. The Kazekage paled as Kyu dropped off the ceiling, stretching. I really hate hiding that much chakra, he complained. After a while it stings holding all that power back, so these fools won't notice. Kyu, you didn't have to hide. You could have waited outside like Shikagara and Pyrai. And miss the Kazekage's face when the cob flies in? No way, that was priceless. Kyu laughed, a tail whipped towards his face and wiped a tear out of his fiery eye. Careful, Kyu, we don't want to sink Suna any further, I chuckled as Kyuubi's booming laugh shook the Kazekage's office. He stopped and looked at me disappointed. You're no fun, Kit. Be a good demon and talk to Shikaku while the Kazekage and I talk business, I said, smiling behind my mask. Kyuubi grumbled but trotted over to Shikaku. Now back to what's happening here. I'll give you a basic overview of Gaara's abilities, at least those I think you should know about. Gaara can tell you more if he chooses to, but once again it is completely his choice. First, Gaara is the holder of a summoning contract. I won't tell you which one, just know that he has enough control and chakra to summon the boss. He has complete control over Sanda power that he has always possessed but is now more defined and precise. Next, he can successfully utilize Kage Bunshin. I'm sure you've heard about shadow clones, so I won't go into details. He is currently wearing over 200 pounds in weights, and excuse me, how old are you, Iraguma? The Sand Umbu asked hesitantly. Gaara looked at him and gave him a dazzling smile. 7.5, he said, grinning. Sensei, I think I can take over from here, Gaara said, looking at me. I nodded and took a step back, joining Shikaku and Kyuubi. As Kiroi Kitsune Sensei said, I am the holder of a summoning contract. I think it is important for you to know that I hold the summoning contract for demon and mortal raccoons such as Shikaku over there. The seal holding Shikaku sealed within me has been improved by Kitsune-sensei and allows me to have some control over his power when Shikaku is released. I can absorb his chakra and pull him back into the seal if he misbehaves. I'm wearing 50 pounds on each leg and arm with an additional 30 on my vest. Without the weights, I have no doubt that I can beat any and all Sunanin in a race or battle. I can call on Shikaku's chakra at any point, creating what Sensei called a demon cloak. I can form a Rasengan, one of the Yondaime Hokage's original jutsu. Everything else you'll learn in time. Gaara finished smirking as his father's jaw fell. How did you learn the Rasengan? A lot of practice, water balloons, small explosions, and quite a lot of time. Gaara chuckled, looking at me. Gaara, I think he meant how anyone could teach you that. The Rasengan was supposed to die with Namikaze Naruto, I explained, scratching Kyuubi behind the ears. Don't worry, Kazekage. A very small number of people know Namikaze jutsu, and only I know the Hiraishin. You know the yes, I know the Hiraishin. If you look, there is a seal above your doorway, I said, shrugging. The Umbu stood and walked towards the doorway, standing on his toes as he checked the doorway. Turning so that he faced us, he gave the Kazekage a nod. I did that the last time I was here when you sent Yoshimaru after Gaara. When you sent for Temari, I snuck in after her and placed the seal before going back to Yoshimaru's place. I've had this jutsu mastered for over 2 years of my life. And how old are you, Kiroi Kitsune? The current Kazekage spat. I smiled behind my mask, anticipating his reaction. Kyuubi and Shikaku tensed, leaning forward. Well, I just celebrated my birthday, I chuckled, remembering the small party we had thrown in Kiri. I'm 8 years old. What? The Kazekage laughed. He actually laughed. Kyuubi growled threateningly, but I shrugged it off, forming a Rasengan Chidori and activating my demon eyes before staring at Gaara's father. I may be 8 years old, but I am more powerful than you can even imagine. I am the holder of the Demon Fox contract and a personal friend and vessel of the Kyuubi no Kitsune. I was taught by Sharingan Kakashi and can now beat him in single combat, leaving him in the hospital while I leave without a scratch. I am the only Kitsune Sennin and my father's son. Do not try to belittle me. You will only get yourself killed. Sensei, I know he deserves it, but can you make an effort to not kill my father? I'd rather not have to deal with a new Kazekage. A new Gaara's father began to stammer before I cut him off. Good point, Gaara, even though I told you not to call me sensei. Kitsune or Taicho work just as well. Yondaime, I'll try not to kill you while I'm in Suna. No guarantees, but I will try. Q, that goes to you too, I said. The demon narrowed his eyes but faced away from Gaara's father. I'm serious, Q, one wrong move and you're sealed. I wasn't going to kill him, Kit. The longer he stays alive, the longer I get to laugh at him. The Kazekage looked at the nine-tailed fox pointedly, trying to decipher his words. Gaara chuckled under his breath and I laughed loudly, not bothering to hide my amusement. Gaara's father glared at me openly and I added more chakra to the Rasengan, making wind whip around the office. The Kazekage gulped and backed away. Now Kazekage, if you are finished, I'll be saying hello to some old friends. Gaara? Are you going to come with me or try to talk some sense into your father? I'll catch up. I need to make sure he understands a few things. Don't tell him anything I wouldn't, especially about me. I'm going to be giving that speech to Konoha first. Okay. Say hello to Temari and Sandstorm for me. I'll see them as soon as I'm done here. I nodded and smiled. Remember to stick to the plan. If I don't see you before I leave, see you in a few years. Same to you, Sensei, Gaara said, smiling an animalistic grin. Taicho, I corrected. Gaara smiled and nodded, chuckling quietly. Gianni, I said, pulling a Kakashi. I eased out of the window, waving goodbye to the Jinchuriki, the Yandame Kazekage, and a very startled Umbu. Sabaka no Temari, you're still short, I smiled, leaning in the doorway of Temari's academy classroom. The Chunin instructor stared at me, apparently angry at having his class interrupted. He looked over my now unmasked face and frowned, not recognizing me. Naruto-kun! Temari shouted, surprised. Her smile fell into a concerned frown. Why are you here? Is Gaara? He's fine, he's okay. I just thought that I should stop by before I go back to my village. I'm from Konoha, I explained to the Chunin. He frowned and reached for his belt, probably for a kunai or shuriken. Calm down, Chunin-san, I'm only here to say hello. I've already seen the Kazekage, he knows I'm on my way out. Who let you leave Konoha? You can't even be a genin yet, the Chunin exclaimed, confused. Nobody really let me leave per se. As for my rank, I'm not technically a genin yet. I am, however, an S-ranking ninja in the bingo book, if that changes your opinion of me. You may know me as the Kiroi Kitsune or the Kitsune Senin. The Kiroi Kitsune is a kid? I highly doubt that, the Chunin said, rolling his eyes. I'd challenge you to a spar, but I don't think the either of our Kage would be very happy if I hurt you, I said, making the children in the classroom laugh and the Chunin redden with anger. Anyway, can I have a few minutes to talk to Temari-chan? Without waiting for an answer, I walked into the room, grabbed Temari's wrist, and pulled her out of the classroom, laughing. So what is this all about, Naruto? Temari asked, still laughing at the image of her teacher's face as she was pulled out of the class. It's about Sandstorm. I need to talk to her about something important. What about? The fact that she can turn into a human, or the fact that she didn't seem to know about that ability until she transformed during training? She already turned? I'm so sorry, I meant to come back before that happened. When did it happen? Last week. Let's just say that Kankuro was very surprised, Temari said, chuckling. I smiled, imagining the puppeteer's face as he watched Sandstorm turn into a beautiful teenage-looking girl. Do you want to see her? She should be somewhere in the village. She doesn't usually come to class with me. She says that everything they teach at the academy is a waste of time. It is. I think I'll summon her. It's faster than searching on foot, even with my demon eyes activated. Demon eyes? New bloodline I inherited, I guess, from Kyuubi. Anyway, Kuchios no Jutsu Sandstorm. I said, slamming my palm to the sandy street. A puff of smoke rose and parted, revealing Sandstorm in her fox form. Seeing me, she snarled and crouched, ready to pounce. Naruto, she growled. Give me one good reason as to why I shouldn't disembowel you where you stand. Because that would kill Q? Try again, she snarled. Looking at her with admiration, I saw the honesty in her threat. Because I can talk to you about your parents. I wasn't lying to Temari when I said I found you alone, I said quietly. Sandstorm with wide eyes shifted out of her crouch and closed her eyes in concentration. When she opened them, she was human, standing at 5 feet 6 inches. She had tan skin and bright green eyes, not unlike Gaara's. Her blonde hair was cut short out of her face. Tell me, she demanded. I can't tell you everything now, it's not the right time. You need to be a little older before I tell you everything. You are a true kitsune, a half-blood. No matter how strong you become, you will always have just one tail when you are in your fox form. I can tell you that your mother was a human named Isa from Whirlpool Country, the same as my mother, and your father was a 3-tailed demon fox named Mamoru. I only knew your mother, and for a short time at that, but she was always smiling and laughing. She was one of my mother's closest friends before my mother Uzumaki Kushina left Whirlpool to become Kyuubi's second Jinchuriki. Your mother was away on a solo mission when Whirlpool Country was attacked and destroyed. I found your mother while I was away training Gaara after I had entrusted you to Temari. She was in Kumo and really sick. I offered to heal her with my medical ninjutsu, but she refused. She said that as long as you were safe she was happy. Is it she dash? Sandstorm asked, sniffing. She died right before we left Cloud 2 days later. I'm sorry, I apologized to the kitsune. She seemed to mull it over for a while before she smiled tightly. Guess I'm like you, Naruto. An orphan but still kick-ass to anyone that gets in our way? Yep, she said, laughing. When do you go back to Konoha? Right now, actually. I only came back to Suna to drop off Gaara and talk to you and Temari. I had hoped to come back before you had transformed. I've helped others through the transition. You weren't the first kitsune I had found, I explained, smiling. At mention of her brother, Temari's eyes lit up. Where is he? I left him talking to your father. He should be back in either you or Gaara, I said, smiling at a building. Temari looked at me as if I was insane but stopped when a chuckle sounded from the sandy wall. Gaara deactivated his camouflage jutsu and jumped down from the wall. How did you know I was there? Gaara asked, looking between myself and Temari. Recognizing his sister, he smiled and gave her a hug. She stiffened slightly before relaxing and hugging her youngest brother back. I missed you, Temari-nichan. It's okay, Temari. He's different. I taught him to separate his consciousness from Shikaku's, and it was that closeness that drove him nearly insane. Gaara is in control over that part of him just as I am with Q. As for your question, Gaara, my sense of smell is inhuman ever since I signed the summoning contract. Your senses should begin to heighten as well, but yours won't be as acute as mine. I chuckled as Temari pulled back and smiled at her brother. I missed you too, Gaara. How have you been? I haven't seen you in so long, Temari said, watching her brother smile and laugh. You're so different. Yeah, Naruto-sensei helped me with Shika. He improved the seal our team of a father put on me. He isn't that bad, Gaara-nikan. He's changed maybe to you. The first thing he did when he saw me was think about how he could make me into a weapon. Don't try to deny it, Naruto-sensei, you must have seen it in his eyes. The only thing keeping him from saying it was the fact that you kept threatening the man. Personally, I don't think he'll ever change to me. Just make sure you don't kill him. That'd screw up all my hard work and planning. And don't call me sensei. I shouted, just noticing the suffix. Sure thing, Naruto Taicho, Gaara said, rolling his eyes carefree. I chuckled and brushed the sand off of my pants, ready to leave. Are you sure you can't stay a little longer? Gaara asked, pouting. I gave him my signature vulpine grin and shook my head. I have a mate to get back to. I promised her I'd only be gone as long as I was training and setting up my network. I've finished both as much as I can in a year. It's time for me to go back to Konoha. I stretched and sent a pulse of chakra to Hinata's necklace. Gaara shivered, feeling the subtle pulse Temari didn't even notice. I'll stick to the plan, make sure you don't mess up on your end, Naruto Taicho. No problem. I'll see you at the exams, cub. I chuckled, using Shikaku's nickname for Gaara. His eyes narrowed before he shook his head, chuckling quietly. By Temari, Sandstorm. Remember what I said last time I was here, I said, nodding to the two before following my pulse to Hina-chan. Chapter 17. Jounin at Last Academy is probably the most boring thing that I could have been doing with my time. What's worse was the fact that I had to fail not once but twice, repeating the same year over and over. When it came time for the third genin exam with the Rookie 9, I prepared myself to create the lamest clone ever. I got into my pose, my idiot mask lit with determination. My hands formed the seal and I yelled Bunshin no Jutsu to Mizuki and Iruka-sensei. The smoke cleared and my clone, pale and unmoving, made an appearance. Iruka twitched and announced that I'd failed. Iruka-sensei. His physical coordination and stamina are excellent. And he managed to come up with something. Isn't that enough to let him pass? Mizuki the traitor said, smiling. Mizuki-sensei, all the others created 3 or more usable clones. Naruto just created 1 and it's practically useless. I can't give him a passing grade. The rest of the day flew by. The other students and their Hittite were met by congratulations from their parents while I sat on my old swing looking sadly at the group. I heard Mizuki appear behind me and I forced myself to not draw a kunai at the man. When we sat on the roof overlooking Konoha, I let myself answer Mizuki as I had last time. I tried to keep a straight face when Mizuki told me he had a secret away that I'd pass for sure. I went along with it, feigning ignorance to his plans, and stole the scroll once more. Opening it at the cabin, I created a dozen shadow clones and we got to work. I dispelled the clones just as Iruka appeared, mastering 4 of the jutsu excluding the shadow clone. I put on my idiot mask and went again through the scene. Once again kunai flew towards us out of the trees. I let myself be pushed back by Iruka even though I drew my own kunai to shield myself. I watched as Iruka was pinned to the cabin wall, Mizuki appearing from the shadows. I'm impressed you found this place, Mizuki announced to the injured Chunin. I see now how it is, Iruka said, wincing slightly. Naruto, give me that scroll, Mizuki said, kneeling on a tree limb. I let my face go blank with panic and confusion, my eyes darting between Mizuki and Iruka-sensei. Wait, what's going on here? I questioned, my voice getting louder and higher. I watched again as Iruka pulled a kunai from his thigh and told me to never give him the scroll. It is a dangerous object that contains forbidden jutsu. It was sealed, Iruka explained, glaring at the man in the trees. Mizuki used you to get it for himself. Naruto, Iruka is only afraid of you holding that scroll, Mizuki chuckled. I let my eyes dart to Iruka, who grimaced before glaring at the man again. I will tell you the truth, Mizuki offered, smiling darkly. I let him tell me the truth, let him throw the shuriken at me. I watched as Iruka jumped in front of the shuriken as he explained what he went through as a child. When Mizuki laughed, I snapped. Time to change the past, I decided, hearing Mizuki announce that Iruka had hated me ever since I had killed his parents. This time, instead of running, I stood up and laughed at the silver-haired ninja. That's right, Naruto, give the scroll to you or an idiot, Mizuki. I've known about the fox my entire life. You miscalculated, it's not you against me. It's you against my hands went into the shadow clone seal us. Mizuki panicked, faced with 1,000 or so clones. Like last time, my clones proceeded to beat him into the ground. The real me smiled and walked over to Iruka-sensei. Here, let me help you, I said to the Chunin. He smiled and shook his head in disbelief. What, you thought I fell for that? I may not be the dead last, but I'm not stupid, I chuckled, my hands lighting up with green energy. Iruka looked a little shocked, but I waved him off, pressing my hands to his thigh and then his back. When I was finished, my clones dispelled themselves and Mizuki was on the ground, twitching, unconscious and bleeding heavily. I guess I went a little overboard, I chuckled. When did how? Iruka asked, incoherent. He shook his head and told me to close my eyes. I did, smiling mentally. After a while, I pretended to be impatient. Iruka-sensei, how much longer? Okay, you can open your eyes now, Iruka announced. I opened my eyes and saw Iruka standing in front of me, his Hittite now tied to my head. Congratulations on your graduation. I grinned and tackled him into a hug, slamming him into a tree. Oh, sorry about that, I grinned, scratching the back of my head. Good thing I healed you before, Iruka chuckled, shaking his head. I think I owe you some ramen, he said, smiling. Yeah. Ramen! I shouted, sending an echo around us. Early the next morning, Hokage's office. Waiting outside the Hokage's office for my cue, I was in the perfect spot to hear everything said between Hiruzen and the gathered jounin that were waiting for their team assignments. I activated demon eyes and stared at the wall in concentration before it appeared to melt away, showing me the gathered ninja. The Sandaime was joined by Kakashi Guy Kurenai Asuma and a number of other jounin I had spotted around the village. 2 Umbu stood silently in the corner. Before I assign definite teams, I need ninjas to test a potential jounin. Any volunteers? The Sandaime asked. Quietly, Kakashi raised his hand, earning many raised eyebrows. Seeing his eternal rival take the challenge, Mado Guy nearly tackled the Sandaime, agreeing in his own special way. I'm sure that if Lee were next to me, he would have. I shook the image from my mind, the familiar question rising in my mind: how did they make the sunset appear behind them? Not finding an answer, I saw Kurenai nod determinedly and Asuma sigh before shrugging. I'm in, he said, already sounding bored. I saw Guy rock on his heels, asking whose flames of youth were burning. The Sandaime nodded at the door, probably knowing I could see him. I chuckled and opened the door. The effect was instantaneous. Kakashi did his strange eye smile. Kurenai studied me. Asuma shrugged and Guy ran up to me. Yash! Naruto! Are you my challenger? Prepare to feel the intensity of my not now, Guy-san, I said, walking to Kakashi and Sandaime. No! You have taken on Kakashi's hip attitude. You will be a perfect rival for Lee. Guy said, crying anime tears before calming down and smiling, giving me a thumbs up. Kakashi and I cringed in unison. So I'm fighting Kakashi, Kurenai, Asuma, and Guy? Anyone else? I asked the Hokage. He shook his head and I nodded. This'll be easy. Where are we doing this? Forest of Death? Training Ground 7. Hiruzen chuckled at my confidence. The other ninjas looked a little more scandalized. I saw Kurenai and a few of the other jounin clench their fists, and Guy's eyes lit with fire. Asuma only pulled out a cigarette. Kakashi rolled his eyes and I smirked, chuckling. Can we do this quickly? Sasuke's probably wondering where I went, I said, glancing at Kakashi, who shrugged. The Sandaime nodded, dismissing us. Great. Everyone meet me at the training ground and don't take too long. I want to get this over with as soon as possible. I shined out of the office, reappearing at Training Ground 7. I was barely finished stretching when everyone else appeared. Guy and Kurenai looked ready to attack already. Kakashi was wary and Asuma looked bored. I chuckled, remembering how similar he and Shikamaru were. The Sandaime appeared minutes later, ready to witness. First, I need to establish a rule, I said. The other jounin minus Kakashi narrowed their eyes, but I ignored them. I'm only going to aim to knock you guys out. If I mess up and seriously injure someone, I need everyone else to back off while I take over, I said, raising my hand as I forced it to glow with green energy. You can back out at any time during the fight and I will not use Kyuubi. Guy, I don't recommend going too far with the gates. I'd rather not get you killed for a battle. Also, I think you should come at me going for the kill. If you don't, I doubt you'll be able to touch me, I said. Guy grinned in enthusiasm. Kurenai and Asuma scoffed and Kakashi nodded his head. He's not kidding, he commented. The other ninjas' heads whipped to the masked ninja and he shrugged. Naruto is stronger and faster than I am. I'm not sure what he's up to now, but he's wearing over 300 pounds in weights. If he hadn't learned medical ninjutsu, I'd probably be dead. The kid packs a punch that'll put Tsunade to shame. I chuckled at the truth in the statement and got into my taijutsu stance, getting ready for my personal style, the Warao Akuma. I smirked as Guy shifted into his pose and Kurenai prepared to cast a genjutsu. And begin, I said, waiting for the battle to begin. Dodge. Punch. Duck. Spin. Jump. Kick. Guy and I were in a fast taijutsu battle, my Akuma no Mi already activated to ward off Kurenai's genjutsu. I was getting a little tired, but fighting 4 high-ranking jounin at once can do that to any 8-year-old. Asuma and Kakashi were fighting mid to long range, trying out as many jutsu as they could fire off even if they were weakening steadily. I chuckled easily as Guy and I separated the spandex-clad Jounin panting heavily. Chidori! I heard a shout to my right and I dodged easily, throwing my leg out in a spin and tripped Sharingan Kakashi. Katon Hazakisho! Asuma shouted, his hands flying through the seals. I was surrounded in a thick gray smoke. I sucked in a deep breath and prepared for my next jutsu, one I had learned from Temari. Futon Tatsu no Ashigoto! I shouted. A tornado rose around me, dispelling the combustible ash. Asuma flew to the other side of the training ground, hitting the ground hard. I winced but watched as he picked himself and crouched, studying me. The swirling air pushed Guy away from me, knocking him to his knees. You're going to have to do better than that. Konoha Senpu! Guy shouted, closing the distance between us. I chuckled and activated the Hiraishin I had put on Kakashi earlier that morning. Appearing next to the silver-haired Jounin, he smiled. I see you got the Hiraishin down. Good job, Naruto, he said, panting as he watched Guy sail through the air without a target. I raised a hand and chopped the back of his neck. He crumpled to the ground and I moved to Kurenai. Easy way or the hard way? Either are easy for me. I just thought I was cut off by a dozen shuriken flying towards me. I dodged them easily and saw Asuma standing off to the side, his chakra blades glowing. I'm not done yet, he grumbled around his cigarette. I chuckled and put a hand on my katana Kamisora slung across my back. I withdrew the blade and pumped my wind-natured chakra into it, the blade surrounded by blue energy. I was careful to remove all of Kyuubi's chakra from my system. I didn't want a purple blade even if it increased the devastation. You have wind-natured chakra, right? Me too, I said, smiling at the ninja. I've been practicing adding my chakra to this blade for a while now. I can keep up this rate of chakra indefinitely from what I've noticed. You're running on empty. If you use your chakra blades now, you'll pass out from chakra exhaustion, I said, glancing at the shinobi's chakra coils with my red eyes. Dynamic entry. A kunai flew past my head and I ducked, sighing as I avoided the kick. Guy frowned before smiling, ranting about my youthful flames again. That won't work on my guy. This dojutsu is similar to the Byakugan. I can see every one of your tenkatsu and how little chakra Asuma has left from all the jutsu. I can see everything in an almost complete circle with a blind spot smaller than the Byakugan. I can also tell that Kurenai is reaching for a kunai, I said, my back to the kunoichi. She froze before smirking and throwing the blade anyway. I bent backwards, easily evading the steel, only to be met by another Konoha Senpu courtesy of Mado Guy. I winced, sent flying by the blow to my head and dropping Kamisora along the way. It stabbed the ground where it landed, digging itself to the hilt, propelled by my chakra. Yash! You may have defeated my eternal rival, but my flames are not going to be extinguished, so I cut him off with my own dynamic entry. It was similar to his. I threw a number of shuriken to distract him, then dropped him in a spinning kick. He fell for it easily. I made sure he was unconscious before moving on to Kurenai and Asuma, both posed defensively. What? Are you done offensively? That makes this a lot less fun. I guess it'll finish this faster, I reasoned, walking to my fallen blade. I slid Kamisora out of the ground, the metal glinting dangerously. Watching Asuma poise his chakra blades, Kurenai tried to cast another genjutsu, immediately cancelled by my eyes. I noticed this and glanced at the kunoichi apologetically. Sorry, Kurenai-san. This dojutsu Akuma no Mi cancels out almost all genjutsu. So far the only thing it can't break is Tsukuyumi, I explained. Kurenai's red eyes narrowed and she drew a kunai. I charged, playing my advantage in kinjutsu even if the jounin didn't know I had prowess. After a month in Iron Country surrounded by samurai and another few weeks in the Hidden Mist with their 7 swordsmen, my kinjutsu was a lot better than it was in the original timeline, even though that doesn't say much. Kinjutsu was never a priority to the Rokudaime. I feigned an uppercut to Asuma, sending kunai to his lower body. He deflected both with his dual blades. I pretended to hit him, letting him shift so the blow was softer. He didn't notice the Hiraishin seal that I placed subtly on his shoulder. Missed me? Asuma laughed. I shook my head and returned his laugh. Look down, I said, jumping away towards Kurenai. Asuma obliged, only now seeing the explosive tags I had tied onto the kunai. The ninja jumped back, trying to distance himself just as the kunai exploded. I smirked, running towards Kurenai. I feigned a kick to her shoulder, letting her deflect the blow to charge my punch. She leaned backwards, twisting to avoid my fist. Thinking fast, I spun downwards, my hand on the ground as I did a handstand and kicked Kurenai to the other side of the field. She didn't stand up, only nodded and stayed seated as she watched the rest of the battle play out. I pushed against the ground, flipping myself so that I was on my feet one more. Seeing that he was the last opposing jounin standing, Asuma narrowed his eyes and studied my form. I didn't give him time to analyze me too closely. I focused my chakra to my fist and punched the ground. A crater rose around my fist, sending cracks through the earth as Asuma jumped away from them as large rocks flew into the air. I jumped onto the boulders, crossing them until I was close to Asuma. He narrowed his eyes as I used my distraction as a bridge. He backed away slowly, not taking his eyes off of me until he found a kunai at his throat. Dead, I announced. The clone in front of the ninja dispelled himself and I smirked. I get it, Asuma nodded as I released him. The crater was just a distraction. You created a clone while the real you came behind me. Close. That was a shadow clone. He could have done you actual damage. Also, I put a Hiraishin on your shoulder after I sent the kunai downwards. Impressive, Kurenai said, running to meet us. She nodded impressed and I left the two to wake up Kakashi and Guy. Jounin at 12, you're going to be something, kid, Asuma said, chuckling. His father Hiruzen nodded as he walked to meet them. I placed a hand on Kakashi's chest, another on his forehead, and pressed chakra to the unconscious ninja's heart and brain, waking him up. He coughed and sat up, smirking under his mask. That's embarrassing. You took me out first, he complained. I laughed lightly at my sensei's childishness. Only because you would have been more difficult down the line. It's a shame you missed all the destruction, though, I said, pointing to the crater I had made. Glancing around the training ground, I felt kind of bad. The field was really trashed. If you want details, talk to Hiruzen. I think he was recording it under that hat. Kakashi laughed at the likeliness of that, and I stood ready to wake Guy up. I was just about to repeat my treatment when the spandex-clad ninja awoke with a start, slamming his fist into my face, sending me flying back to the trio of ninjas. Kakashi broke my fall. What the hell, Guy? I was only going to wake you up. I shouted at the green beast. He winced as I let loose a wave of killing intent. I cracked my neck, dispelling the killing intent, and laughed at the indignation in Kakashi's eye. Oh, sorry, Kakashi. I didn't mean to land on you, I said, getting up and offering him my hand. He took it and I pulled him up. It didn't exactly work, seeing as he was almost twice as tall as I was, but at least he didn't fall on me. While Guy went on about how he was going to train after this defeat, I turned to Sandaime. So, Sandaime? I asked, nonchalant. Hiruzen chuckled under his disbelief. I saw the hat shift, a camera lens appearing beneath the fabric before it moved back into place. I stifled a laugh. So? Naruto, you just defeated 4 of Konoha's jounin. You knocked out Kakashi of the Sharingan in less than 20 minutes, Hiruzen announced, slightly shocked. I told you that Akuma no Mi can overpower the Sharingan and the Byakugan, I mumbled, a little embarrassed by the blatant stares I was now getting from the ninjas, the only exception being Kakashi. You're 12 years old, Kurenai protested. I was jounin at 13. What's the difference of a year? Kakashi said, shrugging. The other ninjas began to talk about the possible repercussions about letting me be a jounin, but I eventually cleared my throat. Can I get a word in? I asked. When the ninjas fell silent, I smiled. Thanks. I think you all are under the impression that I'm an innocent kid. I was raised by Kakashi of the Sharingan. I've worn weights since my 5th birthday by my choice. I'm the holder of a summoning contract as well as the first human to sign it. I can do a Chidori and a Rasengan at the same time, both high-level jutsu. I'm a seal master as my parents were and have befriended the Kyuubi no Kitsune. Do you really want me on D-rank missions? Kakashi nodded, backing my speech. Kurenai stumbled back as Suma's cigarette fell to the ground. Guy began preaching about the flames of my youth and how brightly they were burning. My fist clenched and I twisted around, punching Guy into the ground. Sorry about that. I can only take youthful flames for so long, I said, lowering my fist. Kakashi chuckled as he watched his rival try and fail to rise from the crater I had created. Did I break anything, Guy? I can fix you up if you need, I shouted into the crater 2 yards across and 4 feet deep. Guy mumbled something that sounded like a no, so I turned away from him as he went on about my hip attitude some more. Thanks, Naruto. I was about to do that myself, Kakashi said, glancing once more at the green beast. Although I don't think the crater would have been so deep either way, Sandame, I think he should be a jounin. From our spars he's already surpassed me by far, maybe even his father. He's even perfected the Rasengan without any help, Kakashi reported. Kurenai studied me, probably wondering if it was true. You know that jutsu causes damage to me too, Kakashi. That's my trump card. If I use it too much I'll lose the ability to mold chakra in my arm, I commented, a blush rising steadily in my cheeks. Oh Jizen! Do I make it or not? Hiruzen chuckled as I let the idiot mask make a small appearance just for Asuma and Kurenai's sake. He sighed before nodding. I'll get you a flak jacket. Cool! I exclaimed before returning to my more serious self. Can I stay around for the team assignments? You still need to assign them, I pointed out. Hiruzen sighed and nodded. Heel Guy, I think I heard his ribs crack, Kakashi chuckled. I nodded and jumped into the crater, my hands glowing. I heard the other 4 jounin move away, talking amongst themselves as they walked towards the Hokage tower. I reactivated my demon eyes, ready to check if I had broken anything. 1, 2, okay, 2 cracked ribs, 1 broken rib and a cracked collarbone. Ouch, sorry Guy. That must have hurt, I rambled, gently placing my hands on the damaged areas. He woke up as I finished healing his ribs, wincing slightly as I moved to his collarbone. Sorry, I didn't mean to punch you that hard. I've always had bad chakra control. Too much or too little chakra can leave an enemy conscious or kill an ally, I said as I fixed the damaged bone. When I was finished I jumped up. Let's go, Jizen said he'd wait for us to give out the team assignments. Yash! Why don't we race to the tower? If I lose I will run 200 laps around Konoha. If I can't do that I drowned out the man's voice, cringing when he went into his nice guy pose, smile and all. You're on. Start on 3. 1, 2, 3. We both shouted before rocketing towards the Hokage tower. I pushed myself, not decreasing my weights. Even with over 300 pounds on my body, I kept up with the green beast easily. Skidding to a stop in front of the tower, I admitted defeat, even though I could not tell the victor, the two of us being so closely matched. Looking at me in admiration, Guy held the door open. Thanks, I said, walking through the door. How heavy are your weights? Guy asked curiously. Right now I'm up to 330. 70 on each arm and leg with another 50 on my vest, I said, ignoring Guy's exclamations about youth as the Hokage's office came in sight. I opened the door, not knocking. Heyo Jizen, I said, taking my place in a corner. What took you so long? Cracked ribs don't take long for you to heal, Kakashi said, sounding concerned. Ah, Kakashi, you're so cute when you're worried, I said with a smirk. I know I took a while. I broke a rib and cracked his collarbone by mistake, I explained. The other jounin who weren't at the fight looked wary of me. Did you tell them yet? They look a little fidgety. I didn't want to tell them while you were absent, Hiruzen explained. Everyone Naruto was just made a jounin. He beat 4 elite jounin in combat all at once. The news was met by mixed emotions. Fear, curiosity, and approval ran through the room in waves. A few protested the news, disbelieving the announcement. Are you going to show them the video, Ojaizen? I know you had a camera under that hat, I said, exposing the sandame. He chuckled but shook his head. They'll take you seriously soon enough. Anyway, back to the team assignments. Chapter 18, Team 7. Now I have all of your team assignments with me, Iruka-sensei said to the rookie 9. Not really belonging in the classroom, I waited outside with the other jounin as Iruka gave his speech about being a ninja. Like last time, I didn't really listen to him, only paying attention when he started announcing teams 7 through 10. Team 7 will be a special squad. Due to the odd number of genin in this year, Team 7 will be made of 2 genin and 2 jounin. The second jounin is new, just appointed this morning, so don't feel at a disadvantage or advantage. Team 7 will be made of Haruno Sakura and Uchiha Sasuke. Team 8 will be Aburame Shino, Hyuga Hinata, and Inuzuka Kiba. Team 9 will be once again. I stopped paying attention, not caring who was on Team 9. If the Sandame trusted me, the teams would be the same. Team 10 will be Nara Shikamaru, Akimichi Chuji, and Yamanaka Ino. Please wait here for your jounin sensei. Good luck, Iruka said before smiling and leaving the classroom. Hey sensei, I said, catching Iruka's attention. He froze for just a moment before rushing me, tackling me in a hug. Good morning to you too? I gasped, breathless. The Chunin chuckled and released me. I pretended to gag as my throat recovered. What's this about your promotion? I heard that you skipped Chunin. Iruka exclaimed. I shushed him, knowing that the genin inside could hear him if he spoke loudly. I pulled him further down the hallway before nodding. Just took the jounin exam today. I came over here to tell you that it was me with Team 7. I wasn't sure if they told you who's with which group, I explained, scratching the back of my head. Iruka chuckled and messed up my hair. But jounin? You couldn't just take the Chunin exams when they come around and be done with it? Iruka said. I could see the sadness in his eyes, sadness that I'd be in danger, but I also saw his attempts to hide it, so I did not comment. If I tell you who I beat, will you believe I'm ready for it? I asked. Iruka chuckled but nodded, obviously not taking me seriously. Okay. I was up against Hatake, Kakashi, Mato, Gyuhi Kurenai, and Sarutobi Asuma all at once. I took Kakashi out in the first 20 minutes, Guy and Kurenai in the next 10 or 20 minutes, and then Asuma in the last 10 minutes. Iruka's jaw hit the ground. But with Mizuki? I asked. Iruka nodded, his mouth still forming incoherent sentences. I knew that if I showed Mizuki my real power, then he'd either run away or I'd accidentally kill him. Even taijutsu was a risk. I've invented my own technique that can take down Kakashi, the Warao Akuma. The laughing demon? In honor of Kyuubi's more violent tendencies, I answered. Iruka winced and I mentally slapped myself. I'm really sorry about your parents, sensei. Iruka only shook his head. We aren't here to talk about the past, that was a long time ago. How about I treat you to some ramen after you and Kakashi get your team? We might as well go now. Kakashi won't be here for another 3 or 4 hours, I replied. Iruka chuckled and nodded. Probably not. I wonder what he does before everything that takes so long. I've never seen him around the village, Iruka mused. I frowned, knowing what he did. He's visiting an old friend, I said, closing the conversation. Irika accepted the close and changed the subject to my new jounin status. It really is incredible though. Who would have thought 12 years old and you already outrank me? Irika laughed, poking my forehead. I smiled sadly, remembering all the times that Itachi had done that to Sasuke. Kakashi thought it. He was the first to volunteer to test me. Guy was going on and on about his youthful flames or something like that. I wasn't really paying attention, I said, laughing as a Chiraku came into sight. Are you going to tell Tucci-san and Ayam-chan? Irika asked me, still smiling. I don't know, I said, scratching the back of my head nervously. I don't want to sound conceited or anything. Wow, a 3-syllable word from the class clown. It's a miracle, Irika said, laughing as we walked into the stand. Tucci turned around, saw me, and immediately brightened. Hey Irika-san, Naruto. What can I get for you too? Tucci said, chuckling at the pride radiating off of Irika. The usual, Irika said, sitting down. I sat in my favorite stool, practically bouncing. Tucci went about making the ramen before placing it down in front of us, looking at me expectantly. So what are you two celebrating? Tucci asked as I dug into my ramen. Irika rolled his eyes and broke his chopsticks open. Naruto's promotion, he said smoothly. I thought I heard something about you graduating, Tucci smiled. Congrats. Irika chuckled and looked at me with admiration in his eyes. It's a little more impressive than Genin. Why don't you tell him, Naruto? Irika asked, setting me up. I glared at him playfully and put down my now empty bowl of ramen. I'm a jounin, I said, coughing in embarrassment at the words. Tucci's eyes widened and he looked at me up and down, probably wondering if I started taking any new medication. Irika chuckled and nodded at his expression, and Tucci snapped out of pouring me another bowl of ramen. On the house, he announced, sitting down and muttering jounin every now and then. Our food gone and paid for, I said goodbye to Irika before jogging to the memorial stone, wondering if Kakashi was still there. Spotting him at the stone, I slowed to a walk and joined him. Are you ready for this? We're in different territory, I murmured. Kakashi scoffed and shrugged. You could have stayed at Genin a little longer. No one was forcing you to go jounin already. I know that, I said quietly. Ready? To the academy! Kakashi exclaimed, hopefully sarcastically. I never was completely sure if this man was going to rip someone's head off or start singing as he skipped down the yellow brick road searching for Emerald City. I laughed at the image in my head and pressed it to my seal with Hinata. I felt her mentally laugh and then turn attention back to Kurenai, talking about her likes and dislikes. I'll be waiting on the roof. Don't give me away, I want to see if Sasuke senses me, I shouted as he ran off. I rolled my eyes and took to the rooftops, running towards Hokage Tower. I sat on the rooftop, bored out of my mind and hidden by a chameleon jutsu. After a while, Kakashi appeared, coming up from the classrooms below, and nodded at me. We both were silent, waiting for Sasuke and Sakura to march up the stairs. With my enhanced hearing, I could pick up Sasuke's muttered complaints and Sakura's high-pitched squeals before I could see either of them. Said he was a new jounin, he better not be some weakling. Who is this guy? Just tested this morning, bitter voice. Check. Aloof attitude? Check. Definitely Sasuke. Sasuke-kun. After the first exclamation, I pressed my hands to my ears, wincing as my ears rang with Sakura's high voice. Yo, I saw Kakashi greet the two with a short wave. Sakura took a look around, her eyes passing over me. I thought we were going to have 2 jounin on our team. Where's the other one? She asked, curious. Sasuke was much more observant, his senses ranging out and finding me. You have got to be kidding me, he groaned before raising his voice to Kakashi. That dobe is a jounin? He barely made genin. That dobe beat me and 3 other elite jounin earlier this morning. He deserves your respect even if you don't like him, Kakashi reprimanded him. Sakura glanced between the two, confusion in her eyes. Wait, what? Sasuke-kun, who's our other sensei? Sakura asked, her green eyes once more examining the roof. I took pity on the young kunoichi. Good job, Sasuke. You've been practicing, I said, canceling out my chameleon jutsu and stretching. Sakura jumped as I melted into the environment and I chuckled at her surprise. Hello, Sakura. Sasuke. I knew Kakashi wouldn't be here for a few hours, so I was out with Iruka getting ramen as a reward for my promotion. Sakura jumped, startled that anyone our age could be higher in rank than her Sasuke-kun. She overlooked trying to understand my strength, immediately choosing to glare at me. Glaring is not going to make me any weaker, just as it will not make you and Sasuke stronger. Instead of complaining about my position, work on improving yours, I said. My eyebrows drew themselves together and I winced. I sound like Hiruzen. Why did I want to be a jounin? I asked, looking at Kakashi, who shrugged. The vest? I don't know. Anyway, introductions. Everyone say their full name, their likes, dislikes, hobbies, and their dream, Kakashi announced cheerfully. I winced, thinking he was on his to Oz. You first, Sakura said, glaring at me but pointing at Kakashi. The silver-haired jounin sighed but complied. My name is Hatake Kakashi. I like a number of things and dislike more. I have a few hobbies that don't have anything to do with you and a few dreams. Next, he said, going through his usual act, not giving anything away. I shrugged. Name's Namikaze Naruto. I love Hinata-chan. I like ramen and sparring with my friends. I don't like people who think they're better than everyone else and people who take more than they deserve. My hobbies are beating up Kakashi the ninja glared at me and learning new jutsu. My dream is to help rebuild my clan, and I know I'm going to become the best Hokage ever, surpassing my father and living up to his legacy. Sakura? I prompted. My name is Haruno Sakura. My likes are. She glanced at Sasuke and giggled before looking back at her lap. My dislikes are loudmouth idiots who show off every chance they get. She glared at me. My hobbies are obviously glancing at Sasuke and giggling, I thought to myself, wondering again why I had ever had a crush on this girl. And my dream is, with a final glance and one last giggle, it was Sasuke's turn. My name is Uchiha Sasuke. I like sparring with Naruto in the forest of death away from everyone else. I like my niece and nephew even if I hate their father. I hate fangirls, he said, glaring at Sakura. My hobbies are training and getting stronger, and my dream is to rebuild my clan and protect everyone I care about, he said, his glare softening before regaining its steel. I glanced at Kakashi when he mentioned his family and I smiled subtly. Not only was Tori pregnant when I had saved her, she was carrying twins, a boy and a girl. She had named the boy Fugaku after Itachi and Sasuke's father, and the girl Tara. Kakashi winked. Would you like to do the honors, Kakashi? I said. Sakura fumed and I could see inner Sakura trying to escape. Sasuke scoffed and leaned against a wall. I think you should, he said, smiling under his mask. If you insist, meet us at Kakashi? Training Ground 7 is a little trashed from my test. Where are we going to meet? Training Ground 7, he replied, rolling his eyes as if it were obvious. I think that it'll work for tomorrow's exercise, don't you? I guess we'll meet at Training Ground 7 at 7 o'clock, and don't eat breakfast or you'll throw up, Kakashi finished. We left simultaneously, Kakashi by Shunshin, myself by Hiration. I opened my eyes to the Namikaze Manor. I had been cleaning it up ever since I returned to Konoha so that it was ready for me to move in as soon as possible. I opened the gates, now sealed shut with a blood seal, and walked up the path. Thanks to my shadow clones, the garden was a little neater, but I had always planned to keep it a little chaotic regardless of what Hina-chan said. I walked to the front door and let myself in the air less stale from my constant comings and goings to and from the house. I walked through the halls seeing what else I needed to do before we started any serious missions. For D-rank I could always send a clone. I doubt that even Kakashi could sense the difference, and he's known me for some 23 years previous timeline included of course. The kitchen was all set up and running, waiting for groceries to be stored in its empty refrigerator and cupboards. The bedrooms were still dusty and unclean for the most part, the only exceptions being my parents' old room, which was going to be mine, and the room directly next to it. Stopping at the door, I glanced into the room that would have been my nursery. I had cleaned it up, putting everything back in its rightful place. I wasn't lying when I promised Hina-chan a family. Closing the door, I walked into my father's personal study. The shelves were still dusty, the jutsu and storage scrolls still lay untouched. Never having enough time to fully explore this room, I had opted against searching it in parts. If I was going to go through this office, it would be all at once. My eyes scanned the shelves, recognizing the basic jutsu that most genin learned. The most basic fire, earth, wind, water, and lightning jutsu were all stored here. I walked around the room finding empty storage scrolls and scrolls filled with kunai, shuriken, senbon, and other various weapons. I chuckled knowing that 1010 would use these scrolls better than I ever could. I had almost put a hand on one of the scrolls when I saw something on the wall behind the shelf. Curious, I pulled the shelf away from the wall, careful not to let anything fall in my search. Lying on the wall was a small seal about the size of a playing card that I recognized as another blood seal, this one much older than the seal I had placed on the gates. Without a second thought, I bit my thumb and smeared my blood, Namikaze blood, onto the seal. The seal changed, it grew until it stretched a foot in diameter and then stopped. I hadn't even thought about what had happened when the area around the seal pressed inwards against the wall before shifting to the left, creating a narrow doorway that opened into a dark passageway. Following the tunnel without a thought, I soon found myself in a large room. Noticing a chandelier, I lit the candles with a weak fire jutsu. The room now illuminated, I finally saw the shelves lining the walls, much like my father's study. This room looked even more abandoned than the rest of the house, the air still and dead. I walked to the center of the room, noticing glass cases. Wiping the grime off the glass, I saw that one of the cases held a dozen of my father's Hiraishin kunai. Another held a weapon scroll holding the Namikaze sword Mizuchi, making me grateful that I had learned Kenjutsu when I had the chance. The last was small, containing a jade ring with the kanji for Namikaze inscribed in purple ink with red waves etched around the edges. I took each item out of the case before blowing out the candles and going back upstairs to study the items in better light. Standing in my bedroom, my parents' former bedroom, I was struck by a delayed realization. I just found the Namikaze records. I thought to myself, smiling at my inadvertent discovery. I looked closer at the ring before sliding it onto my right middle finger, the ring somehow seeming to tighten around my finger. Pushing the thought out of my mind, I turned to the Namikaze sword. Opening the scroll, I found another seal. Releasing the seal, a katana appeared in my hand. The katana was not unlike my own blade, the length and weight matching perfectly. The Namikaze katana possessed a cloth-covered ebony, a short gold and red tassel attached to the end. The blade itself was slightly curved, the tip formed into a diagonal point. Etched onto the center, running up 2/3 of the blade, was a detailed drawing of a dragon swimming through water, the waves etched in gold, the dragon in red. Holding the katana, it seemed to radiate power somehow. Without hesitation, I switched out Kamisora for Mizuchi, my family's katana. Having already learned the Hiraishin, the kunai weren't as much as a surprise as the katana was. I picked up the kunai and threw it to the other side of the room, feeling my chakra get drawn to it as soon as it was airborne. Glancing out the window, I decided that I need a trip to Heiki no Senmon, the weaponry store that Tenten's father ran. I put one of the kunai in my pocket and went back into the village, resealing the gates on my way out. Chapter 19, Wave Country's Bridge Builder. Hey 10, I hadn't even finished my greeting when I was tackled by a young kunoichi. Naruto! Ten shouted, laughing. After Hina-chan's party, we had all stayed good friends. Even Niji had forgiven Ten for the marker incident. Can't breathe, need oxygen, I gasped. Ten may be the weapon's mistress, but that doesn't mean she's weak. Quite the opposite if my cracking ribs were a sign. Oh, sorry. I haven't seen you in so long, she blushed lightly, letting me go. What have you been up to? I held a finger to tell her to give me a minute, and she waited patiently. You know, beating up your sensei, I said, nonchalant. Tenten's eyes widened, then narrowed. You beat up Guy sensei? What did you do? What were you doing? Yeah, I cracked a couple of his ribs, broke a rib, and accidentally cracked his collarbone. It's okay, I healed him up, medical ninjutsu, I explained, seeing her confusion. I lifted my hands, now glowing with green energy. I was taking the Jounin exam. The Jounin exam? I thought you couldn't even pass the academy. Ten shouted, not sure if she should take me seriously. I was kind of pretending to be stupid. It worked, didn't it? And Sandame got the fight on video. If you want to see it, I'm sure he's going to show it to your father at some point, I chuckled at the man's antics. Ten looked in between punching me and congratulating me, so I gave her the chance to calm down. 5 minutes later, she looked up with a straight face. So what are you doing here? I need to talk to your father. I need another 36 of my father's kunai, and I'm pretty sure your father is the one that my dad went to for his equipment. The Hiraition kunai? Yep, I said, pulling one out. Ten picked up the strange kunai and tested the weight in her hand, studying the seal and the 3 prongs. I learned the Hiraition a few years ago, but I only just now found the kunai. I'll go get my dad, Ten said, pushing the kunai back into my hands. Oh, Tusen! She shouted, running further into the store. A few minutes later, she reappeared with her father in tow. Ah, hello, Naruto. What brings you here today? I need 36 Hiraition kunai, I said determinedly. Tenten's father nodded and motioned me towards the back. I followed and found myself in a smithy of sorts. I already have 24. Your father had ordered them before the attack, and I thought that you'd eventually want them. I'll have the other dozen next week if you want to come back, and he said, pulling a box off a shelf. Why don't you send them with Ten to the Namikaze house? I was planning on having a party, I explained. Tenten's father's eyes brightened. I heard about your promotion, congrats. Jounin at 12, that's impressive, he said, handing me the box. I opened it and saw my father's kunai glinting in the light off the embers in the forge. Thanks. I'm already part of a team due to my promotion. We have a team with only 2 genin. Sandamo Jizen thought it'd be a good idea for me to start with a team since I'm so young. I see, may I ask who's on the team? He said, leading the way back outside. Myself, Uchiha Sasuke, Haruno Sakura, and Hitaki Kakashi, I answered, smiling. Once we were back in the main store, I took an empty scroll from my belt and sealed the kunai in it. That's better, I said as Ten watched. You use scrolls too? Yeah, it makes everything easier to carry around. Oh, while I'm here. My mask has a crack in it, do you think you could fix it? I asked, unsealing my fox mask. Somehow, while dropping Gaara back at Suna, a long scratch appeared, slashing through 2 whiskers diagonally. Tenten's father took one look at the mask and staggered back a step before regaining his composure. Kiroi Kitsune? He whispered as Ten asked him what was wrong. I mentally groaned. Oh, Tusen? Are you okay? Ten asked, concerned. The man shook himself and nodded before taking the mask and inspecting it closely. Hi, I'm fine. Ten, could you go upstairs while I talk to your friend? We need to talk business, he said, examining the mask. Ten sulked but left us. This is really excellent work. May I ask who made this? I've never seen a Konoha citizen make or wear anything like this. I had this mask made by an old friend of mine and Kiri, the woman who creates their Hanunin masks. Who knows? That Kiroi Kitsune is 12? I asked. He nodded and I began to count. So far it's only you, Kakashi Hina-chan, the Yondaime Kazekage. What? He wasn't very nice to his son. You might know his son as the Iraguma? I took him from Suna for a year to train and learn how to defend himself from his father, I explained. There are a couple people in Wave who know who I really am, a bridge builder and his daughter. Other than that, I'm pretty sure it's a well-kept secret for now. For now? Tenten's father asked, still studying the mask. I'm going to use the mask when we go out of Konoha on missions. I think traveling with a couple of big names, Kiroi Kitsune and Kakashi of the Sharingan, will help the team get stronger, I said. The man nodded and finished inspecting the mask. The crack isn't that deep, it should be an easy enough fix. Should I have Tenten bring you the mask with the kunai? No, I'll come get the mask. I don't think it'd be a good idea to announce who I really am. I've made more than a few enemies out there that I'd rather not attract to Konoha. Okay. Did you need anything else? I think I need a new sheath for my katana. The one I have now was for my old blade Kamisora. It doesn't quite match Mizuchi, I said, pulling out my new weapon. The Namikaze blade. I haven't seen this since your father almost broke it in half after he fought the Raikage. He never was an expert in Kenjutsu. How's yours? After a month in Iron Country and a few weeks in Kiri, I've learned a thing or two, I smirked. Tenten's father only chuckled and looked closer at the blade before picking out an ebony sheath with gold flames running down its length. I paid for everything and left, thanking the man. Don't forget to tell Tenten to come over sometime. I don't see her that much anymore, I called into the shop at the door. Walking into the street, I looked around trying to decide what to do now. You could summon me, Kyuubi almost begged, bored out of his mind inside my mind. I laughed at his boredom. You are too much like me, Kit, laughing at my misery. You're lucky I don't completely hate you anymore. Love you, Q. The demon didn't respond, grumbling to himself before he cut the connection. I smiled as he left his chakra to my use. If I didn't know better, I'd think the fox was getting attached to me. I heard a growl inside my head and I smiled. Training Ground 7. I had the best memories from this place, no matter what anyone said. I might have been tied to a log, poked in the ass, and a number of other things, but I always smiled when I thought of this place. Looking at it now, riddled with scorch marks and craters from my fight with Elite Jounin, I chuckled as Sakura's jaw hit the ground and Sasuke scoffed. Like always, the three of us were waiting for Kakashi. Unlike last time, I didn't show up until 9. When I walked up, Sakura tried to punch me into the ground. I smiled to myself, remembering how weak she was before training with Tsunade Bacon. Your Sakura began to scream at me. I winced, my sensitive ears ringing. I'm not late, I'm smart. Kakashi is always at least 2 hours late. You should have known that and come later. I also ate this morning, I announced, pointing at the 3 logs which by some miracle were still standing. Sakura had barely begun her tirade when Kakashi appeared, flickering into existence. Yo, sorry, you're late. Sakura shouted. Both Kakashi and I winced at the volume. He began to create an excuse when I moved to defend him, albeit in a roundabout manner. No, you were 2 hours early. He's the sensei, when he shows up you're there. It doesn't matter if you just got there or had been waiting for hours. Kakashi is infamously late, a detail you should have picked up on. Also, I'd appreciate it if you'd lower your volume, my hearing is much better than yours. Just because you're a Jounin now doesn't mean you can. It does mean he can, Sakura Kakashi pointed out. He's earned his place as a Jounin by defeating 4 elite Jounin, including myself, in an all-out battle. Actually, we were going all out, he was barely trying. Now it's time for you to earn your place as a genin. What? She asked, sounding confused. The test at the academy is only to see if you have the potential to become genin, Kakashi began. This test is to prove that you deserve to be a ninja. Fail this and you're back at the academy, I finished. Like last time, Sakura began to panic until she noticed Sasuke's aloof attitude. Bring it, the Uchiha challenged. I grinned evilly and Sakura took half a step back as I released some killing intent. You know that doesn't affect me that much, Sasuke pointed out. No, but it does affect your teammate. Those who abandon their mission are scum, but those who abandon their teammates are worse than scum, I pressed. Kakashi looked at me with pride, smiling with his eye again. Stealing my motto, Naruto? Kakashi said, chuckling. I smiled back and he shook his head. This is going to be a little different from the other genin tests because there are only 2 of you. There is a greater chance you will be sent back to the academy. Your objective is to get a bell from either myself or Naruto, he said, holding up his bell as I raised my own for the 2 seat before attaching it to my belt. To be a little fairer, Naruto and I will not be working together. Whoever doesn't get a bell by noon gets sent back to the academy, Kakashi announced, setting the alarm. Sakura looked scandalized and almost screamed before I put a hand on her mouth, ready to say my part. Come at us with the intent to kill. You can use anything, any jutsu you know, any weapons you possess to attack us. If you don't get a bell, you get tied to the logs while the rest of us eat lunch, I finished, smiling evilly. Kakashi nodded. Start on 3. 1, 2, I said. 3. We both shouted. I stayed where I was while Kakashi shined away. I looked around at the 2, both running towards the tree line. I sighed, knowing that they'd try to play defensive until they got serious. I pushed chakra to my eyes and watched with red eyes, and they hid in the foliage. I saw Kakashi just yards away, sitting in a tree and reading his orange book. I sat down in the lotus position, ready to meditate. I sat observing the nature chakra around me. I was careful not to absorb any. Transforming into a fox in front of 2 fresh genin could be intimidating. I studied the flow of nature around me, noticing each time Sakura shifted her weight nervously and each time Sasuke tightened his grip on his kunai, watching me as I sat motionless. A bird flew to me, landing on my shoulder. I smiled as the bird cuddled into my neck. Sakura moved towards Sasuke in what she might have considered a stealthy move. I chuckled as she nearly tripped on a root. Sasuke-kun, Sasuke-kun. She hissed into the tree. He glanced down at her. What do you want? He growled back. We aren't going to get a bell by ourselves. Why else would Naruto be so relaxed? He must know we don't have a chance against Kakashi-sensei, she reasoned. I smiled, watching with my senses as Kakashi stood and shined next to her. Are you 2 going to do something? This is getting a little boring, he said. I opened my eyes and the robin hopped off of my shoulder, singing as it flew away. I agree with Kakashi. How about we make this more interesting? I said, my hands forming the familiar cross. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. The forest was instantly filled with my clones surrounding Sakura and Sasuke. As one we spoke. I'll dispel all the clones if you 2 start playing offensive. It's almost 10, I announced. The clones all vanished in a puff of smoke, leaving me besides Kakashi. Are you 2 going to get serious? At this rate, you'll never get the bells. The 2 genin jumped away and ran from us. Kakashi looked at their backs with a narrowed eye. Did you put a Hiraishin on each of them? Yep. I don't think they even noticed, I smirked, feeling my chakra drawn to the seals I had placed on each genin's back. Kakashi sighed and jumped into a tree, opening his book again. That really is garbage. Blame Jiraiya. He's a good writer, Kakashi defended. I rolled my eyes at the ninja. So are you my sensei or am I their sensei? I asked. Kakashi closed his book and looked up thinking. I think you're their sensei. You've surpassed me. There isn't anything I can really teach you. The only thing you taught us was water and tree walking. Everything else we learned from the Sannin. I pointed out to the copy Nin. He shrugged and went back to his book. I went back to the field and began to clean it up a bit, making sure the ropes were ready for their next victims. I laughed eating my lunch as Kakashi told stories from Team Minato. Hearing about my father as a sensei, not as a Hokage, was funny. At least it was to me. The two genin tied to the logs didn't seem to think so. So then Rin had to deal with all the scratches that Demon Cat gave Obito, and Minato-sensei. Kakashi laughed with me, remembering the good old days chasing Tora around the leaf. How long is that cat going to live? I hear it's still wreaking havoc. Who knows? Kakashi chuckled, eating his lunch without taking off the mask. I sighed, remembering the many times Team 7 tried and failed to unmask the ninja. I remember this test, I said, watching Sakura struggle against her ropes. I was starving until my sensei left for a while and one of my teammates gave me some food. That was one of the nicest things he ever did for me. Now that I think about it, I'm amused. What do you mean? You barely graduated. How could you've had a team? Sasuke asked, breaking his personal silence for the first time. I have a life outside of you, Sasuke, I said, shrugging. That's old news. By the way, you two passed, I announced. Sakura began to shout and Sasuke glared at his ropes. Listen, this test wasn't about getting a bell. Kakashi and I are way out of your league. The point of this test was to judge your teamwork skills. Sakura, by going to Sasuke and creating a plan together, you passed the test. Sasuke passed when he didn't brush you off like usual. Aside from that, you two have to wear weights starting now, I said, pulling out a scroll that contained my extra sets of chakra weights. Right on cue, Sakura began to complain and Sasuke didn't look fazed, reminding me that I had already started him on weights. He's right, weights are a good way to get stronger and faster, Kakashi said, backing me up. I flashed him a smile and went to release the two genin. These are chakra weights. They activate when you push chakra into them. The more chakra, the heavier they feel. Sasuke, I know you're already wearing weights from training with me, so you're going to have to increase the weights. Sakura, this is your first time with weights. Don't push them too far to try to impress Sasuke, you'll only hurt yourself, I said, my hands forming chakra scalpels as I sliced the ropes. I can take it, Sakura insisted. Kakashi shook his head at her and looked at her sternly. Naruto's right, if you put too much stress on your body at once you can damage your muscles. He could probably heal you with his medical ninjutsu, but I doubt he would after warning you. Okay, I said, standing and brushing the dirt off of my black jounin pants. Sakura, I want you to put 20 pounds on each leg and 15 on each arm. I'd recommend that you also get a vest or jacket that you can put weights into. Sasuke, what are you up to now? 25 on each arm, 30 on each leg, and another 20 on my chest. Good. Leave it at that for a few more days. And how much weight are you wearing? Sakura asked me. I glanced at the kunoichi and stifled a laugh. She was now kneeling from the extra weight. I'm wearing 330 pounds of weights. 75 on each arm and leg with another 30 on my vest. I'm wearing more on my arm than you have on your entire body. Don't feel bad though, I've been wearing weights since I turned 5, I said, turning towards Kakashi. He nodded and I turned back to my meditation. I felt Sakura take a step towards me, her fist raised, and I smirked, killing the idiot mask. You can't touch me, Sakura, even while I'm meditating. I can see the smallest pieces of chakra when I concentrate like this. I can watch and predict every move you can make. I stopped pressing my chakra to Sakura. She froze, her heartbeat accelerating before I released her. Freeze you where you stand. Naruto, don't do that. If you lose control of your chakra you might kill her, Kakashi warned. I nodded and stood slowly. No problem, Taicho, I said, smiling at the change in name. Kakashi turned to Sakura. I'm not going to protect you from Naruto. He is your sensei whether you like it or not. You need to obey him now or on any mission or it could cost you. That goes to you too, Sasuke. You've trained with Naruto, you know he is the stronger. If you don't listen to him you'll get yourselves killed on the first C-rank mission you get. Sasuke scoffed but nodded and walked up to me. So sensei, he exaggerated, what are we doing now? Kakashi, I think they should have the day off to get used to the weights. Sakura can learn tree walking tomorrow and we can test their chakra affinity, I planned. Kakashi nodded, already pulling his orange book out. Sakura looked eager and as if she had forgotten about her weights ran up to Sasuke without a second thought. He took one cold glance at her. No, he said before she even had a chance to ask him out. She began to try to reason with him and I found myself needing to hold my ears again. Losing patience, my hands went to seals. Mizu Sataira Yoku Ida. I shouted, slamming my palm on the ground. Knowing what to expect, Kakashi and Sasuke jumped back. Sakura was not so fortunate and was carried some distance from us. Sasuke nodded at me gratefully and Kakashi shook his head at my actions. I'll go to Hiruzen and get us started with the missions I assigned myself. Maybe I can avoid Tora for a while, that cat hates me even more than he hated. I paused about to say Sasuke as I remembered our genin days. I shrugged, leaving the sentence hanging. Good idea. I'm going to go read garbage? I chuckled. Arasenin is going to get punched next time I see him, I said as I watched Sakura dripping wet stalk towards me and raised a fist. Just as the fist came close to my skin I Hiroshined to the seal I had placed on her back, appearing just behind her. You need to add chakra to your fist just at your knuckles. It adds a lot more power to your strike, I advised. The green eyes glared at me before she turned away and ran towards Sasuke's receding back. Sasuke-kun! Wait for me! She yelled, disappearing from sight as she chased him into the trees. I chuckled and turned to Kakashi just in time to see the last of a Shunshin dissolve into nothingness. Accepting the goodbye, I closed my eyes and Hiroshined back to the Namikaze manor. Opening my eyes, I turned away from the gates, walking instead towards the Hyuga compound. I was about to talk to the man at the gate when I heard a familiar voice. Naruto, what are you doing here? Hayashi asked, sounding surprised under the usual propriety. He narrowed his eyes ever so slightly before noticing my outfit, the standard green flak jacket over my orange and mesh shirt followed by my sage coat. My black jounin pants were a little dusty from the training ground but no less recognizable. Hello, Hayashi-sama. I was wondering if I could speak to you about Hinata-chan, I stated, bowing my head slightly. Hayashi nodded and motioned me into the compound before leading me to main house. 2 weeks later, Naruto in position, I murmured into my headset. I'm ready, Sasuke said into his microphone. Sakura ready. Kakashi en route. Pushing target to Sasuke, the jounin said, stalking the creature, trapping it in a triangle made of myself, Sakura, and Sasuke. Target sighted. Rush in 3, 2, 1. I shouted, jumping from my hiding spot and tackling the ball of fur that was the daimyo's wife's cat. The two genin ran to meet me, prying the cat off of my face and grabbing it by the scruff. Got him! Sakura cheered, holding the demon away from her. I growled at it, my Akuma no Mi activating. Naruto, Sasuke warned. I shook my head, letting the chakra dissipate. I hate this cat, I spat, holding a glowing hand to my face. Glancing at my teammates, I noticed that I had the worst of the injuries. Kakashi walked towards us from his spot further down the street, nodding in approval. Good job, guys. Let's take him back to Madame Shirjimi, Kakashi said, trying not to glare at the cat. I chuckled before wincing as a deep scratch on my cheek started to bleed. You should probably heal yourself, Naruto. Some of those cuts look pretty bad. No kidding. Why does he hate me so much? I didn't even do anything to him. I complained, holding a glowing hand to my face. Kakashi shrugged. You look like your father. Sensei and Toro weren't very good friends either, Kakashi explained briefly. Whatever the reason, I steered clear of the cat until he was safely suffocated by Madame Shirjimi in a painful hug. At the Hokage's office. Good work, Sandame said, nodding at us. I have a few more D-rank missions if you want. Hiruzen-sama, with all due respect, I think that Sasuke and Sakura are ready for a C-rank. I cut in. The Sandame glared at me for a moment before remembering who he was talking to. After all, I was just following the timeline. His gaze softened and he glanced back down at his papers, knowing what mission I was talking about. I do actually have a C-rank here, protecting a bridge builder from the land of waves. We'll take it, Kakashi said. Sandame nodded and looked towards the Umbu. Get to Tazuna-san. He's going back to Nami, he ordered. The Umbu left, reappearing minutes later escorting an old man. Tazuna, the super bridge builder, took one glance at me and smiled. Naruto? He asked. I nodded and smiled. It's good to see you, Tazuna. How are Tsunami and Inari? I asked, walking towards the bridge builder and shaking his hand. Tazuna's eyes flashed briefly with worry, but it was soon disguised. They're well. Laying off the sake? A little. So the Kiroi Kitsune's one of my bodyguards? I never thought I'd see the day, Tazuna chuckled, making me wince. Hiruzen leaned back in his chair as the Umbu guards moved to defend him. Sasuke and Sakura glanced around them confused. Did I just blow your cover? He asked nervously. I sighed before shrugging. A little. I was going to tell the village when I got back. I'm wearing the mask on all out of village missions, I explained, unsealing my mask and holding it up to Hiruzen. He sighed tiredly but nodded. I don't want to know, he insisted. I smiled and nodded. Probably not. I looked to Sasuke and Sakura, ready to explain. Instead of going to academy like you two did, I created an advanced type of clone, a flesh clone, to go to class. I left Konoha for a year and created the alias Kiroi Kitsune, the Yellow Fox, so that I could make a name for myself as my father did, using the Yellow Flash, as well as protect my identity as his son. Iwa wouldn't be very happy if the Yandame's son strolled right in. They didn't really mind the Kiroi Kitsune for a while. Along the way, I took a student, a child who was being abused in his home village, and trained him into who you might know as the Iraguma. We've been to every major ninja village as well as many minor villages and countries, taking names and training. That trip is one of the reasons I'm as strong as I am now. You're being very vague, Tazuna commented, messing up my hair. I grimaced, knowing that I was still the shortest. He and the Iraguma have been making enemies left and right. I know for a fact that Iwa would like your head. Iwa is still weak from the Third Great Shinobi War. They don't have a force large or skilled enough to take me down yet. I think it'll take another 3 or 4 years before they really get back on their feet. Enough about my enemies, we need to get you to Kumi. Sakura and Sasuke meet us at the village gates at 9 with a few weeks' supplies. Hi, Sasuke and Sakura answered. Sakura was excited for her first real mission. Sasuke couldn't care less. I smiled at the familiar reactions of Team 7 before glaring at Kakashi. And you will be on time tomorrow. I don't care what you do, get to that gate or I will find you, I threatened. Hiruzen chuckled as Kakashi shuddered, frozen momentarily by a wave of killing intent I sent his way. Naruto, you are scaring you students, the old man said. I glanced at the genin, frozen and breathing shallowly. Sorry, I said sheepishly, scratching the back of my head once again. It's difficult to control the direction. I still need to work on my control a little. Sasuke was the first to relax again, his previous encounters with my chakra showing their worth. You've got to quit that, he complained. I'm preparing you for what's out there. I've been outside of Konoha for over a year of my life, and there are people whose killing intent will do more damage than mine. One of my teachers back in Kyuubi could knock most ninjas out with one pulse. It took me down until the 5th or 6th time. You put yourself through that much killing intent? Why? Kakashi asked, sounding concerned. I smirked at him. Getting protective, Kakashi? I was training. A Regima could take it after the 2nd time. I don't like to be shown up. Your pride is going to get you killed one day, Naruto Hiruzen said, shaking his head. Probably. At least I know when to stop. I might not be a Nara, but I'm not stupid. Okay, enough of my exploits. Let's save those for the road. We should get home and packed, I advised. I was about to Hiration out of the office when I got an idea. Taking out one of my weapons scrolls, I unsealed 4 of my father's kunai. I want each of you to take a kunai before you leave, I decided. Kakashi took it without a second glance, storing it in his belt. Sasuke picked it up, testing the weight. Sakura studied the 3 prongs, and Tazuna chuckled, recognizing the kunai. Never thought I'd see one of there, he said, picking up the kunai. Don't make me regret it, I chuckled at the old man. Turning to Sakura and Sasuke, I went back into sensei mode. These are Hiration kunai. My father used these to earn his name as the Yellow Flash. Using the Hiration, I can teleport almost anywhere with very little chakra loss. This is one of the few jutsu I will not teach you. My father designed this to be a Namikaze jutsu, so it'll stay a clan jutsu. Why are you giving them to us if you're not going to show us the jutsu that goes with them? Sakura asked, twirling the kunai in her hand. Kakashi smiled sadly under the mask before explaining. He's being smart. His father did the same thing on my first mission as a jounin. Anytime we throw these kunai or send chakra into them, Naruto feels it. That means that if we ever get into trouble, he knows to come help us out. This trick saved mine and my teammates' lives during the 4th Great Shinobi War. That's where I got the idea, I admitted. This way, if we're ever in a tough battle, I can get to where I need to be quickly and virtually undetected. The only sign of this jutsu is the yellow flash left behind. If this works out, I'll get more permanent seals made for you too, I said to Sakura and Sasuke, thinking of Hina-chan's necklace. They nodded and stored the kunai in their belts. I smiled, nodding determinedly. Okay, everyone meet at the gates at 9 o'clock. Anyone late gets hunted down by me. Tazuna chuckled as all the ninja Sandaime included shuddered. Chapter 20 Fights and Friends. So are Regima and I walk up to the Raikage, and just as we're about to challenge him, his brother runs up to us and starts rapping about how awesome he is. I was about to call him an oxtoctopus, being the Hachibi Jinchuriki and all, but then this huge group of Kyumonin run up to us and chase us halfway up a mountain, and I was distracted when I saw the familiar puddle lying in wait. I sighed and looked at Kakashi through my famous or infamous mask, signaling for Sasuke and Sakura to get into a defensive position. Wow, this is a very normal-looking puddle. Not out of place at all in the middle of this dry spell, I said loudly. Seconds passed and I grew impatient. Maybe there isn't, Sakura began. I shook my head at her. Yo, demon brothers. I know you're there. This is your only warning. Get out here and fight, leave in peace, or make me come get you, your choice. The brothers emerged as they had last time, their confidence gone. They took a look at Kakashi before looking at me, at my mask. I smirked behind my mask as their eyes grew confused, then wide with badly hidden fear. Didn't expect to see me, did you? I said, paralyzing them with killing intent before shining behind them and knocking each out with a blow to the back of the head. I said, looking down as they crumpled. That wasn't fun at all. Kakashi, can you tie them up and get packin'? I'm going to make sure they were alone, I said as I took off my mask, getting into the lotus position and stretching my senses. No reinforcements were good to go until we see Zabuza. Kuchios no Jutsu. Kakashi muttered, his hands forming seals faster than my blue eyes could see. Packin appeared in a puff of smoke, looking interested. What's up? He asked, glancing around before laying eyes on the demon brothers. Naruto knocked out the demon brothers. Can you go back to Konoha and get some Umbu to take them away? We need to get to Wave, Kakashi explained. Packin looked at me impressed before noticing the mask in my hand. Hey Packin, I said, putting the mask back on. Packin stopped gazing at me before shaking himself, accepting the new information. Hey kid. Is that Kiroi Kitsune? Kitsune Senin? The very same. Nice to meet you, I said, making my voice deeper. Packin rolled his eyes and nodded to Kakashi. Leave it to me, he said, running in the direction we had come. We watched him disappear, making a small dust trail. Looking at my team, I saw that Sakura looked scared. Don't worry, Sakura. I don't let my teammates die, Kakashi reassured her. I nodded, smiling before I checked the ropes and nodded, signaling the team to get back into formation before we set off again. Spotting Haku crouched in a bush, I smiled under my mask, withdrawing a Hiraishin kunai from my belt. Kakashi? The ninja glanced around and nodded. I sent the kunai flying in a wide arc towards Haku. I watched as she formed a substitution jutsu, scaring the poor white rabbit. Like last time, Sakura began to complain that I'd scared her, sending kunai into the brush while Kakashi went to investigate. The rabbit was once again terrified. Sakura began to yell at me when I held a finger up. Sakura. This is a snow rabbit. Their fur changes with the seasons so that they blend with their surroundings. Which should mean I glanced through the trees, searching for chakra with my now red eyes. I counted in my head, letting Zabuza notice Kakashi again. I watched as he lifted his sword, getting ready to throw. 3, 2, 1, everyone duck. The sword spiraled through the air, slashing where my team's heads used to be. The sword stabbed the same tree and Zabuza jumped onto it quickly. He's Kakashi, began warningly. I smiled under my mask. Momochi Zabuza, demon of the bloody mist. I thought you were still in grass. I said, twirling my kunai before I lowered it to my chest. Zabuza glanced at my team before going to study me. You're looking less gray, I said, commenting on his more human skin. The ninja looked at my height before registering the mask and recognizing me. He jumped down from his sword, leaving it stuck in the tree. Kiroi Kitsune, he chuckled, shaking his head. Wave must be better than Gata thinks if it can afford Sharingan. Kakashi and the infamous Kiroi Kitsune. Not really, this is my team. I went back to Konoha and took the Jounin exam. Wait, what do you mean infamous? Kumo? He said, chuckling under his bandages. I was minding my own business. The Raikage had no right to hunt you down after you basically kidnapped the knee girl? He cut in. Instead of pressing my point, I sighed and looked at him. Do you really have to kill Tazuna? My team is on a mission to protect him, I said. I'd really rather not have to fight you, but I will if you insist. Think I'm crazy? Haku might be a good medic, but I doubt even she would be able to patch me up after a round with you, he said. I laughed, remembering our multiple spars ending with Zabuza unconscious. Glancing at my team, I chuckled at their expressions. Tazuna and Sakura still looked terrified, not trusting Zabuza's word that he wouldn't attack us. Sasuke was tense, ready to spring to action. Kakashi was looking at me, probably wondering about what I hadn't told him about my year-long trip. Do I want to know? He asked, pointing at Zabuza. I smiled, shrugging. Zabuza was one of my Kenjutsu teachers. By the way, Momochi Zabuza mi Hataki Kakashi. He adopted me after my parents died, I explained. Zabuza nodded at the jounin before turning back to me. So this is kind of awkward, he said. I chuckled and glanced into the trees looking for Haku. Haku should come out soon. She worries too much. You three can relax, I said, glancing back at Sakura, Sasuke, and Tazuna. The two genin were still playing defense, covering the bridge builder as best they could. Zabuza's not going to do anything or he'll have Haku to answer to, I smirked. Right on cue, the kunoichi appeared, the Kiri Hunter Nin mask still in place. She looked between Zabuza and Team 7 confused before spotting me. Kitsune-kun, she greeted smiling as she took off her mask. Where's Aragima-kun? You don't need to call me Kiroi Kitsune anymore, I'm using my real name again. As for Aragima, I took him back to Suna after training. I told his father that I'd only take him out for a year or so. Oh, Haku said, sounding a little disappointed. I smiled, knowing the kunoichi had developed a crush on the oblivious redhead. If things don't work out with Gaara and Matsuri, I hope he turns to Haku. I put a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Don't worry, I made sure Kazekage team knows that Aragima is allowed visitors. Just say my name and he'll let you in, provided you don't kill him. No promises, she said, chuckling. Gaara had definitely told her of his childhood until I had come. Team? Sakura asked Kakashi, wondering what the Kazekage had done that was so horrible. I looked at her, serious. The Yondaime Kazekage ordered a number of unsuccessful attempts at Aragima's life. The day I arrived in Suna, when Aragima was only 6, the Kazekage ordered Aragima's uncle, the man who raised him, to kill him. It took a long time to heal that wound. The Kazekage is no friend to me, I said, narrowing my eyes. Sakura nodded slightly and I shrugged. Either way, that's in the past. I took him out of Suna and taught him how to protect himself and others so that it doesn't happen again. You can't protect all the time, Sasuke said, looking at Zabuza's sword still in the tree. I shrugged and jumped into the tree, grabbing the sword's hilt before throwing it down to Zabuza. It landed obediently, stabbing itself into the ground inches from the demon of the bloody mist's foot. I can try, I replied, jumping back down. We still have a ways to go. Let's go. I haven't seen Inari or Tsunami in a long time, I said, looking down the road with red eyes. Zabuza nodded, finally understanding my excellent vision, before looking sheepish. I took pity on him. I think you two should stick with us. Gata won't be very happy about your resignation. After this mission, I can pull some strings and get your status as missing nin cleared. I still owe you one from the Kinjutsu lessons. No, you took care of that debt when you helped me with my medical ninjutsu. Now you're just being chivalrous, Haku accused. I smiled, scratching the back of my head. What if I am? I've been chased around before. It's not a good way to live. That's one of the reasons I went back to Konoha and got a team. Stability, I pointed out to the two ninja. Zabuza nodded and Haku stared at me with gratitude. The group, now 7 people, began to walk to the bridge builder's home. Haku began to talk to Sakura about how great medical ninjutsu was, and I could see the light in the pink-haired kunoichi's eyes. Sasuke was talking to Kakashi about the Sharingan, a now familiar topic with those two. I glanced at Zabuza, chuckling to myself as he apologized for almost killing him. Could my life be any stranger? Well, you could have a demon lord sealed in your weight already have that, Kyuubi joked, pacing my mindscape. You could always summon me, he said, trying to be suave. Did I just use the word suave? Cammy, I'm going insane. But no, I'm not going to summon you. Sakura and Sasuke don't even know which summoning contract I hold, let alone who the boss is. I don't think they realize I can talk to you. They probably assume that you stay quiet in the back of my mind, giving me chakra whenever I need it, but staying out of my life. Well, that doesn't sound very fun. You know what would be fun? Summoning me right about now. Now this is just awkward, Kyuubi muttered, cutting the connection between our psyches. I chuckled, still hearing muffled growls and complaints inside my head. I kept my mask on until we saw the house, wary of any stray thugs that had thought twice in the last timeline. Stepping to the front door, I put a hand on my mask, ready to remove it just as a shape flew towards me, tackling me in a hug. I fell backwards, laughing as I unsuccessfully tried to pull Inari off of me. Naruto! He shouted, pinning me down. I chuckled in surrender. Zabuza took one look at me and scoffed, teasingly bitter. Sure. 24 wa nin? Easy piece of cake. Haku and I? Not a chance. A 7-year-old kid? Now you're in trouble, Kitsune, Zabuza said before he introduced himself to Tsunami. I'm an old friend of Kitsune Naruto. I was one of his kinjutsu masters. Hello, she smiled, her eyes drawn to the huge sword slung on his back. Dinner will be on the table in a few minutes. The woman walked back into the kitchen, followed by Tazuna. Hey, I'm 8. Inari shouted at the demon of the bloody mist. The Jounin glanced at the kid before messing up his head. Sure you are, he said, cracking his neck. I chuckled at my old teacher's antics. Just think, Zabuza. If I can beat you up but not Inari, what does that say about you? I countered. Inari beamed while Zabuza clenched his fist. That's not a good idea, Zabuza. Maybe we can spar later in the forest where we can't break anyone, I mean thing. Now you'll just go easy on me, he shrugged, releasing his fist. Only because I'd rather not kill you, I retorted. I turned back to Kakashi. Are you up for a spar? You, Zabuza, and Haku against me? It might be learning experience for Sasuke and Sakura watching 4 high-level ninja fight. Why not? Kakashi shrugged. Zabuza and Haku nodded. Dinner's ready. Tsunami called from the kitchen. Sitting at the table, washed up and ready to eat, Kakashi turned to me. When are you going to tell them? He was vague, but I knew what he was talking about. After the spar. By the way, you might want to leave the Hiraishin kunai behind when we fight, I said as Kakashi nodded, remembering that he carried my kunai. I'll take the seal I have on your vest too, I said, chuckling as Kakashi turned confused to his back. When did you? He said, finally noticing the seal on the back of his flak jacket. Back with the demon brothers. I put my hand on your shoulder when you summoned Pakin, I explained. Kakashi nodded, impressed. You're getting good at putting them down unnoticed, he commented. I nodded, pointing the seals on Zabuza's sword and on Haku's shoulder. Are you going to tell them about it? Nah, I'll let them find out, I winked. The rest of the meal went quickly, hurried by various stories and conversations. By the end of dinner, I was nearly growling at Zabuza. The man had a sick fascination with recounting each time I'd fallen on my ass during my training with him. I bit back a complaint watching Inari and Haku laugh, surrounded by friends. Chapter 21, Kyuubi meets Haruno. Kakashi, you count, I said, stretching. The forest was eerily silent, almost as if the woods knew that there was about to be some major damage inflicted to its old trees. The birds were silent, all either gone or watching as Zabuza held his sword aloft, Haku clutching her ice Senbon easily. Kakashi narrowed his eyes, Sharingan exposed, but began the countdown. Watch as much as you can, you too. I don't think you'll be able to pick up much, but try to focus on Naruto. On 3. 1, 2, 3. The copy Nin jumped, shining into the trees. I smiled as Haku summoned her demonic ice mirrors, ready to begin her Senbon assault. I disagreed, my hands forming a fire technique. Akuma Bijutsu Fenikusu no Akari. I shouted, slamming my clenched fist into the ground. A crater erupted around my hand, flames generating and gathering at the edges. One moment the flames seemed about to die. The next they rose in an inferno surrounding me in a tornado of fire. The fire expanded in a circle, pushing Haku out of her ice and shattering her mirrors, evaporating the moisture in the air, preventing her mirrors as well as Zabuza's mist from making a second appearance. I killed the flames, trying not to burn the forest to a crisp. The fire obeyed each ember, fizzling out as I cut off my chakra. Turning to Sakura and Sasuke, I gave them some advice. Get as far as you can without losing the view. Don't get yourselves hurt because you want to see how strong we are, I said, watching as Sakura nearly fell out of the tree. The two genin nodded and retreated further into the trees, leaving the four of us in the clearing. Who's next? I was answered by Kakashi's foot flying towards my head. Instead of dodging it, I grabbed his leg, easily stopping him midair. His sweat dropped and I smirked before tossing him lightly to the other side of the clearing. He did a flip and landed in a crouch, trying to trap me in a genjutsu. In response, I activated Demon Eyes, ducking as Kubikiri Hocho approached my head. Now in a crouch, I swung my leg out and spun, tripping the bandaged ninja. Haven't had to avoid that blade in a while. Speaking of blades that missed, have you seen Kisame Samahata? Freaky, I said, dodging each of Zabuza's attacks. I stood up straight, looking at the ninja. Are we going to do a kenjutsu duel, because I learned from the samurai after I met you? I was going to train with Kisame too, but his sword liked my chakra too much. Are you going to draw Kamasura or just evade everything? Zabuza growled, a little breathless. I smiled, remembering that I hadn't told anyone outside of Tenten's father of my new blade. The katana on my back is not Kamasura. I understand why you thought that the hilts are mostly the same. The only real difference on the hilt is the tassel. The blade, I smiled, is much more impressive. I put a hand on the hilt, sliding the blade out in a slash of movement. The steel glinted in the sunshine, the gold and red etchings shifting in the light. This katana is named Mizuchi. This is a clan weapon designed to be used only by the current head, I said, running a hand down the face of the blade. According to my clan records, it changes its form to match the needs of its owner. Mizuchi matches Kamasura's length and weight, making it easier for me to wield. On top of that, I can add my wind chakra to Mizuchi, making it that much deadlier. So you're a clan head now? At 11? I'm 12, and yes, I said, holding my katana aloft. My father was the last in a long line of ninjas. I talked as I dodged and slashed, occasionally ducking away from a taijutsu move from Kakashi. After a while, Zabuza stumbled. I darted forward and paralyzed his arms with the jukin I learned in the previous timeline. Zabuza dropped Kubikiri Hocho, his muscles failing. That's cheating, he accused. Glancing at Kakashi, he nodded. Toss me a kunai, will you? Not doubting his skill, Kakashi withdrew a standard kunai and tossed it in his direction. Just to make the Miss Ninja angry, I threw out a chakra thread and pulled the kunai to me, twirling it in my hand. Looking for this? I said, holding the kunai before tossing it back. The ninja glared at me before catching the kunai in his mouth. I closed my eyes for half a second, shining to the sword now abandoned behind Zabuza. I took a step towards my former teacher and struck the back of his head, knocking him out. I think we're done. Unless you want to go taijutsu? I asked Kakashi, who shook his head quickly. Now you're just showing off. You've beat guy with that style, I'm not going to stand a chance, he said. I shrugged and focused chakra to my hands, ready to wake Zabuza up and give him his arms back. Zabuza was out faster than I expected. Do you think he was going easy on me? He didn't even try for a Mizu Bunshin this time, I said, kneeling over the missing nin. Probably, Kakashi conceded. You didn't need to use that technique on Haku. You just wanted to show off. Your point? My point is that if you face someone stronger than us, you're going to waste your chakra in the first 10 minutes. I know when it's okay to show off. Besides, I can go into sage mode if I'm up against someone really strong, I defended. Zabuza opened his eyes and grimaced. I really hate that technique, he groaned, sitting up. When did you put the seal down? When I gave Kubikiri Hocho back the first time, I answered, smirking before following my Hiraishin to Haku. Healing the Kunoichi, I remembered the previous timeline in which she was the one waking me up. That was a good technique, she said, cracking her neck. I grimaced. Zabuza was rubbing off on her. It broke my mirrors. Sorry about that, I probably should have used a weaker jutsu. How long have I been out? Not too long. After I took Zabuza down Kakashi and I stopped. I just finished healing Zabuza. Before you ask, all I did was hit some Tenkatsu and paralyze his arms. No permanent damage. Haku nodded and stood. We walked side by side back to Kakashi and Zabuza, now joined by Sasuke and Sakura. How much of that did you actually see? I asked the two genin. Expecting Sakura to answer, I was surprised when Sasuke replied first. Not too much, only when you were talking. What was that fire technique that you used against Haku? I didn't recognize it, Sasuke said, looking at me with an expression I couldn't place, a mix between curiosity and excitement, two emotions rarely if ever seen on the Uchiha's face. I'd be surprised if you had recognized it. It's a demonic technique called Phoenix's Rage. It's one of the jutsu that I can't physically teach you. Why not? Because you don't have demonic chakra or a bloodline that allows you to bypass that. Haku uses a demonic art when she creates her ice mirrors, something she can accomplish through her bloodline. Then why can you do it? Sakura whined. I winced, remembering that they didn't know about the seal on my stomach. Haku put a hand on my shoulder. There is a reason as to why Naruto is so strong. Haku stopped talking when I shook my head. It's my responsibility to say it. Besides, I'm proud of it. You two know about what happened 12 years ago when my father faced Kyuubi. He didn't die killing it like the younger generation believes. He died sealing it. Sealing it into what? Sakura asked pointedly. I undid my flak jacket and pushed my shirt away, showing my stomach. I pushed chakra to my skin and the black seal emerged. Into me. I was born right before the attack. My chakra coils weren't fully developed. My father took me to the battlefield and sealed half of Kyuubi's chakra into me to protect the village. The rest of the village was saved, but my father died as per the deal. What deal? Sasuke asked curiously. I looked at him, hopeful that he wouldn't panic and run to Orochi team. He made a deal with Shinigami, his body and soul, for the sealing of the Kyuubi. That is what makes this seal so inescapable for the Kyuubi. I literally have a demon coexisting in my mind. Our consciousnesses separate but able to communicate. At my words, Sakura paled. I saw her lips form the word communicate and her eyes widened. It isn't what you think, Sakura. Kyuubi is not influencing me. I added to the original seal to make sure of that, I said, pointing to my addition. Kyuubi has absolutely no control over my actions. If he doesn't like what I'm doing, all he can do is growl and pace my mind. Even then, I can temporarily cut the connection between our minds, I explained. Sakura calmed down a little, and I suddenly remembered that her father was killed in Kyuubi's rampage. Damn, the fox growled at himself. Can you tell her I said sorry, Kit? Stupid Madara, if I ever see that masked bastard, I'm going to. Why don't you apologize? I said, an idea forming in my mind. Kyuubi didn't respond, only perked his ears up. Control your chakra, I warned. Sakura, you know I have a summoning contract and I feel extremely unfair as you are the only one present to not know which one. On top of that, I want you to meet someone, I said, trying to figure out what to say. Turn around, I ordered. The Kunoichi looked angry for a moment before Kakashi nodded at her sternly. She scoffed but turned around. My hands went through the seals and I muttered Kuchios no Jutsu. A puff of smoke and Kyuubi a little larger than a large mortal fox appeared. I chuckled as I saw him biting his paw in an attempt to control his chakra. I placed a hand on him and felt a surge of chakra pour into my system. I stored the chakra in a seal I had specially designed for demonic chakra, the seal hidden under my Hitayate. Watching Kyuubi's chakra get under control, I moved my hand so that I was simply scratching behind his ears. At the sight of 9 tails, Sasuke backed up into a tree. He had seen me summon demon foxes before, but I had usually capped it off at 4 or 5 tails. The infamous Kyuubi no Kitsune was apparently a different story for the Uchiha. Tails, I hissed. Kyuubi nodded and closed his eyes in concentration. He became just a little smaller than 9 tails, merging into one as he assumed his mortal fox form. He hated this form but took it whenever the occasion called for it. Take a look, Sakura. The kunoichi turned around and looked down, seeing the fox. Keeping his mouth shut, Kyuubi behaved admirably when he was picked up by the now cooing Haruno. "Ah, he's so cute," she exclaimed, hugging the fox. I winced out of sympathy for my friend. He's one of my oldest friends. I've known this fox since the day I was born, I hinted. Moments passed and Sakura continued to squeeze the life out of a demon lord. Finally realizing what I had said, she dropped the fox and stumbled back, landing on her but stammering. Kyuubi dropped his head sadly. He wanted to apologize. I thought it wouldn't be the same coming from me, I explained. Kyuubi nodded, unable to speak while in this form. He can't talk while he is in this form. He isn't in it often enough to learn with different vocal cords. I thought it'd be best if you saw him as with just one tail first. First? She stammered, pointing at the fox. Kyuubi sighed, shrinking himself just a little more before jumping onto my shoulder just like Koyuki. First, I confirmed. I'm the holder of the demon fox summoning contract, the contract of which Q is the boss summons. If I encounter a powerful enemy, I might need to summon Q. If that happens, I need to make sure you will be okay to fight alongside him. Fight alongside that thing. Do you know what I do know, Sakura? I said quietly. I lost my father that day just like you did. No matter what you lose, I will always have lost more, I said, thinking about the last battle, the fall of Konoha. Kakashi bowed his head, remembering the same. I know, it's just that Sakura's voice drifted off as she stared at Kyuubi, her tone softening. Kyuubi, I said, allowing the change. He nodded, once stretching before he jumped off of my shoulder and growing on the way to the ground. His paws touching the dirt, his tail split into 9. Vixen, he said, looking at Sakura gently. I know that I cannot say anything to make you trust me after what I did. I want you to know that I mean you no harm and that 12 years ago I did not attack by choice. A man tricked Kyuubi using his dojutsu, I said quietly. A man that many now believe to be dead. Who? Haku asked, curious. Uchiha Madara, co-founder of Konoha, I growled at the name. If my spy network is right, he's gathering followers so he can hunt down Jinchuriki. That is one of the things I was doing that year, warning every Jinchuriki I could. That is one of the reasons as to why Iwa hates me, that Sasuke discovered that I was trying to help their Jinchuriki, something they consider taboo. Taking down 24 of his ninjas is another reason, Zabuza said, chuckling. I glared at him weakly. I didn't kill a single one of his ninjas. All of them were only unconscious when I left. If any died, it was because their higher-ups ordered their execution for failing to kill me. What's a Jinchuriki? Sakura asked, unfamiliar with the term. Sasuke nodded in the background. Jinchuriki, the power of human sacrifice. Jinchuriki is the name that the older generations used to label people like me, the hosts of any one of 9-tailed beasts. The more tails, the more power. In theory, if I and any other Jinchuriki had a battle, I'd always be the victor because Kyuubi has a greater number of tails. However, most of a Jinchuriki's power lies in emotions, something most tailed beasts or bijou disregard. Until I humanized Q, he was a bloodthirsty demon with an intense hatred for humanity, especially towards me. Why? Naruto might be stupid, but he isn't that bad, Sakura said, her voice quiet. He was my jailer, Kyuubi shrugged. You spend that many years stuck inside a kit, you start to go insane. No, you started to protect me, I corrected. He grinned and sat down, rolling in the grass. The great Kyuubi no Kitsune, fearless and merciless leader of the demonic foxes, rolling around in the grass. Sakura was right, you are cute, I smirked at the fox. He growled, sitting up, and growing up he looked straight into my eyes, exactly level. You seem to think I wouldn't attack you. And you seem to think that I wouldn't. I stopped talking, placing a hand on his shoulder, sucking up more of his chakra. I stored the chakra while he growled under my hand. Bring you down to size. Sometimes I really hate you, Kit. We're still here, Zabuza pointed out. I blinked, looking up at the gathered ninjas. Right. Why are you still here? Zabuza, you can either stay and watch or go back to Tsunamis and tell them I kicked your ass. Haku, I'm going to summon Koyuki so you two can practice ice techniques. Kakashi takes Sasuke and teaching him your lightning techniques. If you start him on Chidori, I will hurt you. Let him work his way up until he activates his Sharingan. Sakura, you will be training with myself and Kazuro, one of my summons. I don't know too many earth jutsu, but he specializes in them. Sounds like a plan. Kakashi nodded before nodding to Sasuke and running into the forest, searching for another clearing. I'll stay, Zabuza shrugged. Okay. Kuchiyos no jutsu. I shouted, slamming my palm onto the grass. A puff of smoke parted to reveal two foxes, Kazura and Koyuki. Koyuki, you are going to help Haku with her ice technique again, I directed. The dark vixen nodded her head and grinned to Haku before leaving for the water. What am I doing, Naruto-sama? Kazura asked, trying not to be disrespectful in front of Kyuubi, his lord and master. You will be helping Sakura with her earth jutsu. Teach her the seals to 2 jutsu and get a start on those. Sakura, when you finish that, I will start teaching you medical ninjutsu. Kyuubi, you can enjoy some time out. Try not to step on anyone, I said. Sakura chuckled before Kyuubi shuddered and grew till he was easily 15 feet tall. He glanced around himself, noting where everyone was before walking away. Are you sure it's safe to let him walk around? He's okay. I still have the connection to his mind. I can see his every thought and emotion. If he gets violent, I can find him and suck him back into the seal with one touch, I said, smiling. Sakura seemed to calm down and walked with Kazura to the other side of the clearing. Give me Kubikiri Hocho, I'll take to Hiraition seal off, I said, offering my hand. Taking the sword, I deactivated the seal with a quick pulse of chakra. I was about to give the blade back when I noticed a long scratch along the blade. Who did that? You did just now. You didn't notice? I guess not. I was a little busy not adding too much chakra to Mizuchi, I said. Well, you added enough chakra to cut steel, Zabuza said, chuckling as he reached for his sword. I shook my hand and ran my hand across the edge, cutting my hand open. What are you fixing your sword? It grows off of blood, I said, swiping my hand across the scratch. It filled itself, the blade growing half an inch longer. I handed the sword back to Zabuza, my hand already closing the wound. Q's chakra is like sake. It's okay the first few shots. Any more and you're in trouble. Zabuza laughed at my analogy and took his sword back, securing it to his back. I watched as Sakura struggled to create her first rock wall, progressing from creating a pile of rubble to a wall 6 feet tall. Standing beside the solid wall, she fell to her knee, breathing deeply, and I smiled. I walked over to her and put a hand on her shoulder. Good job. You learned this a lot faster than I did, I said truthfully. She nodded tiredly. What a second, I said, pushing her back down. I'm going to show you a technique that I created. I'll teach you how to do this, but I don't think you should try it until you build up your chakra reserves. One hand above her belly button and another on her forehead to steady her, I carefully separated my chakra from Kyuubi's, taking a small portion of my own and sliding it in Sakura's chakra coils. She felt the exchange and flinched before her body recognized the chakra and accepted it, allowing it to replenish her reserves. I sat back when I was finished, letting Kyuubi send me more chakra than usual. My skin began to glow a faint red before it faded, the chakra being converted into usable energy. Sakura watched as her bruises and cuts faded away as my skin shone red. What did you just do? Chakra exchange. I separated my chakra from Kyuubi's and transplanted it into your chakra coils. The exchange nearly doubles the chakra, generating energy from the chakra I sent to you as soon as it enters your body, replacing what was lost and using the leftover chakra to heal any injuries you had. In theory, this technique shouldn't be possible. It eats away at the user's own energy, but I'll be fine. That's what the red glow with my skin was. Whenever I use that technique, Q sends me more chakra to replenish my stores. My body converts it to usable energy and it gets sent back into my own coils. The reason I don't want you using this technique yet is because you aren't a Jinchuriki. You don't have enough chakra to perform this technique without either falling into a coma from chakra exhaustion or dying. So you gave me chakra? Pretty much. Try not to talk about it to anyone outside of Team 7. I'm going to talk to Hiruzen and get it classified as a kinjutsu. A forbidden jutsu? Why? You need to understand something, Sakura. In a shinobi village such as Konoha, forbidden does not mean illegal. The label kinjutsu is a warning to anyone that tries to use them. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, one of my favorite techniques, is a kinjutsu because of the potential harm to the user. What harm? Death by chakra exhaustion. That applies to chakra exchange as well. If someone overuses it without the chakra to back it up, they could easily hurt themselves as well as the people around them. For example, if I hadn't separated Kyuubi's chakra from my own before transplanting it into your body, would have attacked the demonic chakra. Would that have been bad? That would have been very bad, I pressed. Sakura nodded, trying to look like she understood. I changed my mind. I'm going to start on medical ninjutsu now. So do I still need to be here? Kazura asked me. I shook my head and he said his goodbyes before disappearing in a puff of smoke. Where do we start, Shursho? Sakura asked, excited. I held up my hands, trying to protect myself. First, don't call me master. If anything, I'm a sensei, I said, scratching the back of my head nervously. Sakura nodded quickly. Okay, second. What do you know about tenketsu? They are the points in our body where chakra gathers. That is all they tell you in the academy. Tenketsu are pressure points in the body that have the ability to release and mold chakra. There are 361 tenketsu in the body, all connected by the chakra network and regulated by the 8 chakra gates. I began. Sakura and I sat on the grass for most of the afternoon as I talked about how the body works. When Haku and Koyuki came back from training, Haku sat with Sakura learning about medical ninjutsu. I was talking about chakra exhaustion when Sasuke and Kakashi trudged out of the forest exhausted. I smiled at them. Great timing, I was just talking about chakra exhaustion. Can you two come over here? I called, waving the two over. Kakashi sat next to me, Sasuke in between Sakura and myself. So we've been out there doing really training while you three have been over here chatting? That's wonderful, Sasuke muttered sarcastically. Thank you for being the first victim, patient, Sasuke. I beamed, chuckling when he glared at me. Haku, I showed you how to help chakra exhaustion last time I saw you. Will you show Sakura how to take care of it? Okay. Sasuke, I need you to lie down, Haku said calmly. He grumbled but stretched out on the grass. Haku put a hand on his forehead and 2 fingers hovered over his heart. Haku closed her eyes in concentration and her fingers lit up with green energy. Opening her eyes, Haku lightly tapped the tenketsu close to his heart. Sasuke twitched but sat up slowly, feeling the touch of green energy spread quickly through his body warmly. He looked up at Haku impressed. "Thanks," he said, flexing his right hand. "Good job, Haku. Sasuke, take it easy for a while. That technique is designed for short term only, so rest up and get some food." "Okay, Sakura, your turn." "Hi," she said, ordering Kakashi to lie down. His sweat dropped but obeyed. Sakura mimicked Haku's pose, one hand on the Jounin's forehead and 2 fingers held above his heart. She narrowed her eyes at her fingers and they lit up with green energy obediently. Watching the genin, I smiled, remembering her similar expression of concentration as she worked over Kankuro after his battle with Sasori. She touched Kakashi's tenketsu and he lay still, knowing what to expect. The masked Jounin smiled before sitting up slowly and nodding to Sakura. "Perfect, Sakura. You have a lot of potential," I praised. Sakura beamed and looked at Kakashi, who nodded. "Good job, Sakura-chan," Haku said, smiling. "It took me a few tries the first time, but you got it on the first. Naruto-kun is right, you have a lot of potential." "Thank you, Haku-chan." Sakura cheered. She had almost turned to Sasuke before remembering our conversation. Flashback: why do you die if you open all 8 gates? The 8 gates all have names, either hinting to their location or describing side effects. The 8th gate is named the Gate of Death. As the user opens more and more gates, they gain more power and can easier access the chakra stored naturally in their bodies, but at a huge risk. Risk? Yes. The first gate, the Gate of Opening, allows the body to use muscles to their full potential. In truth, we don't use 80% of our muscular power to keep them from degeneration or disintegration. The 4th gate, the Gate of Pain, increases speed and power to the point where you can easily tear your muscles apart. The 7th gate, the Gate of Wonder, shreds muscle fibers. If anything or anyone touches the user after the gate closes, it causes extreme pain. The final gate, the Gate of Death, releases all of the body's energy. It converts every fiber of your being into pure strength. The 8th gate can give you powers stronger than any Kage, but the destruction done to your body will kill you as soon as it wears off. There's no chance to heal them? None. Every attempt at doing so failed, always resulting in death for the opener of the gates. I paused, remembering another attempt that failed each time. Shaking my head, I changed the subject. "Hey Sakura, why do you like Sasuke so much? You spend every spare minute of your time trying to make him yours, and he won't look at you twice. Why? Is this a competition with Ino, or do you think there is a chance that he'll eventually notice you?" Sakura sat for a moment looking confused. I was about to go back to anatomy when she answered with a question. "Have you ever felt that no matter how much someone ignores you, there is still some ulterior motive? That they do care, they just don't know it yet?" "Of course. I used to feel that way about you." "So what stopped you?" Sakura asked, almost begging. "I realized it was a crush. I got over you and finally noticed Hina-chan standing in front of me," I answered. I saw her downcast face and I sighed. "I'm not saying that I want you to get over Sasuke. I'm not saying that you need to." "Then what are you saying?" Sakura asked. Looking at her face, I realized she seemed almost close to tears. "I'm saying you should try something else. The only reason he keeps blowing you off right now is because of your attitude. If Sasuke hates fangirls, don't be his fangirl. Let him hate Ino Pig," I added, purely for Sakura's benefit. She smiled almost sadly. "Don't go out of your way for him. If he won't notice when you're there, he'll have to notice when you aren't." "What, playing hard to get?" Sakura said, chuckling. Sakura, if there is anything I know about Sasuke, it is that he can't resist a challenge. There are only two possible explanations as to why he can't stand fangirls. What? The first is that he's gay, I said, backing away when Sakura withdrew a handful of shuriken. I hit a tree and laughed nervously. Moving on, the second is that wants something to work for. I've lived with him for a while. If he doesn't have to fight for something, he doesn't want it. He won't chase unless he thinks you're worth catching. So I'm supposed to act like I don't care what he thinks? Exactly. And if that doesn't work? Sakura, if that doesn't work, he is gay. I'm not trying to be funny or insulting or whatever, you're a great kunoichi. Remember? Former obsession talking, I said, pointing to myself. But you got over it, she said sadly. I rolled my eyes. I found my soul mate. She waited for me. You might have to wait for yours. I'm sorry if you didn't notice this, but us guys are really oblivious or stupid. Usually some combination thereof, I joked. Sakura smiled and gave me a quick hug. So Gate of Death kills you? She asked, returning us to the lesson. Who knew? I laughed as Koyuki and Haku appeared from the trees. End flashback. After getting her compliments from Haku, Kakashi and myself, Sakura turned back to me, ignoring Sasuke. Kakashi glanced between them but didn't comment. All right, I think that's enough for today. Haku, I need to talk to you, I said, standing. Everyone stood with me and started walking back to Tazuna's house, talking about the day's training. What is it, sensei? She chuckled, smirking teasingly. I need you to go to Gato. I need you to lie to him, I said, hating my words as Haku paled. But Haku, I wouldn't ask you if I didn't think I needed to. I've had spies in Wave for some time now. If you don't tell Gato what you need to, there will be an attack at the construction site within a week. Even then we can only delay it while we train, I said, trying to come up with a good cover for how I knew about the attack. It must have worked, Haku swallowed, then nodded. What should I say? I need you to tell him that Zabuza needs to recover. Say that Tazuna is being guarded by 3 genin and Sharingan Kakashi. Zabuza underestimated the genin and you needed to intervene. You took him down with Senbon to the neck under the guise of a mist hunter Nin. We believed your story and you took Zabuza away and began to heal him before you went to report. You don't want me to tell him about you? No. Don't tell him about me, Sakura or Sasuke. Just say 3 genin, I instructed. Haku nodded slowly. What if he asks for more details on the fight? Rule number 1 of the missing Nin: know your clients. Gato is good at intimidation and bad at planning ahead. Tell him you will beat us next time we meet. That'll be enough for him. Okay. I'll get going. Make sure they save some food for me, Haku said, kissing me on the cheek before flickering out of existence. Chapter 22 Battle on the Bridge. The week passed quickly, uneventfully. We continued to train, separating into the groups I had created that first day. When Haku, who had experience with poisons, offered to help Sakura with that aspect of medical ninjutsu, I began to have kinjutsu spars with Zabuza, both of us teaching the other new tricks or techniques. There was no new action on the bridge as I had predicted until 6 days had passed. This time around I gathered everyone beforehand to set up a battle plan. Okay, here's the plan. I want everyone to take a Hiraishin kunai. Even you too, I said, looking at Inari and Tsunami. I wouldn't put it past Gato to attack a defenseless family. If you need me, throw the kunai and I'll feel it. Got it? I asked. Inari and his mother nodded understandingly. Zabuza, Haku, I want you two already there. If there are people messing with the bridge or the workers, take them out. I don't care if you kill them or not, just make sure they can't move. If Gata shows up before us, throw the kunai at his feet and I take care of his bodyguards while Zabuza takes care of Gatu. I've already placed Hiraishin seals all over the bridge. Meaning if you see a yellow flash, don't throw a kunai at it, it will be me and I will not be very happy. If I was completely wrong, Gata doesn't show and the bridge is finished on schedule, we can all go on with our lives after I find Gatu and let Zabuza beat the crap out of him. Any questions? Yeah, what is everyone else doing while you do all the work? Sasuke asked, glaring. Fighting each other. We need to pretend that we are still enemies. Sasuke will fight Haku while Kakashi and I fight Zabuza, and Sakura will protect Tazuna with Koyuki and Kazura. Okay, why am I fighting you? Zabuza asked, not wanting to get beat up by a 12-year-old in public. You won't be fighting me. You'll be fighting a series of clones. Mask off. If you dispel one, don't worry, another will take its place. I'll be in the background, mask on, making sure Gata shows up. Any more questions? Glancing around the kitchen table, I saw nothing but determination. I nodded before smiling at Kakashi. I'm the captain today, sensei. You really are stealing all of my lines, he complained weakly. Besides, you've been the captain this entire mission, Taicho, he replied, chuckling under his breath. I smiled and stretched. Sasuke, are you up for a taijutsu spar? I'm pretty tired now, I said, challenging the Uchiha to prove my point to Sakura. Sasuke glared at me and pointed at the door. You're on. Let's go on the water, work on your chakra control, I said, yawning. Sasuke twitched angrily and grabbed my wrist, pulling me towards the docks. I only smiled. Even as tired as I was, Sasuke might need some medical attention from one pink-haired kunoichi who had conveniently learned how to mend bones earlier today. I smirked, knowing that she'd react indifferently as he winced in pain. I shifted into my Warao Akuma stance, grinning sadistically. 6 minutes later, 4 of my shadow clones carried a thoroughly soaked, bruised, and somewhat broken Uchiha Sasuke through Tsunami's front door. I laid him down on the table and called for Sakura to meet me in the kitchen. What is Naruto, you have to stop beating him up, she groaned. At least hold off until I get better at medical ninjutsu. I thought this would be a perfect challenge. Subject has 2 cracked ribs, a broken wrist, a cracked femur, bruises head to toe, and a very nasty-looking cut on his upper left arm, I reported. Sakura logged the information in her mind, surveying the damage with her eyes before staring at me incredulously. A cracked femur? She nearly shouted. You do realize that the femur is the strongest bone in the human body. How'd you crack the strongest bone in his body sparring? Did you use the Warao Akuma again? Maybe a little, I said, trying to shrink under Sakura's rage and hidden worry. I could have healed him up, but I thought this would be a good way to test how you're doing. So you kicked his ass to test me? That's sweet of you, she muttered, her hands already glowing with green energy. I smiled to myself as she kept a straight face as she healed his ribs and wrist before turning to me looking exhausted. Can you take care of the femur? I'm still tired from sparring with Haku, she said a little breathlessly. Sure. Go eat something and go to sleep, I'll finish with him, I said, watching Sakura walk to the cupboards and pull out some crackers. She ate a few before saying goodnight and walking upstairs. When I heard her door close, I looked at Sasuke, his eyes open. I'm going to kill you, he threatened. I might have been just a little scared if he didn't wince when I poked his leg. That's not very nice, I said, holding my now green hand to his cracked bone. When the bone was healed, I moved my hand to his arm. The cut was about 5 inches long and jagged, resembling a lightning bolt, and oozing blood steadily. I frowned at it, knowing it would scar. You are going to have a scar even with my medical ninjutsu. It looks kind of like a lightning bolt. How did you do this? I know I didn't cause this. Who knows, he muttered. I was about to ask him what's wrong when he beat me to it. What's Sakura's problem? What do you mean? I said, focusing on the bruises on my teammate's ribs. He coughed and shifted his weight awkwardly. He's been acting weird around me ever since she started with the medical ninjutsu. Do you know what happened? Weird how? I asked, moving my hand to the side of his head, also bruised and swollen. He grimaced but held still. I don't know, not screaming every time she sees me? He suggested. I stopped healing him to look at him for a moment. Maybe she got over you. It happens. A person gets a crush and realizes that their crush can't stand them. They move on. I guess Sakura's reached that point in her life, I said, slowly, watching Sasuke's eyes, the only part of him that betrayed emotion. First there was relief, then confusion, followed quickly by determination. I mentally congratulated myself for having correctly analyzed Sasuke's mind. You sound pretty familiar with disappointment, he smirked. I smiled and shrugged, focused on my hands and keeping the demonic chakra away. I guess. I was obsessed with Sakura a few years ago. I was lucky Hina-chan waited for me to snap out of that. I bet Sakura is pretty upset she doesn't have anyone waiting for her since she and Ino fell out competing over you. You're pretty comfortable talking about your feelings, Sasuke scoffed. I smirked and stopped treating him. You're pretty comfortable insulting the person who is healing you, I retorted. Taking pity on him and knowing that we'd need him tomorrow, I resumed healing him. Either way, between the two of us, I'm the one with a girlfriend. Okay, I'm not saying that you should stop hating fangirls, I totally understand that. I think you should try to let them down without crushing their hopes and dreams. Why? Were you really Rookie of the Year? You are so oblivious, I said, shaking my head. Sasuke quieted and looked at me, wondering what I was talking about. I'll explain this slowly for you. You can't rebuild your clan without getting married. Which, if you don't know, involves getting a girlfriend and proposing to her. You're pretty confident. How are you so sure of you and Hinata? Sasuke said, rolling his eyes. Because I've already talked to her father. The paperwork is all taken care of. Hayashi was happy to be tied to the Namikaze name. I'm going to propose when she becomes a chunin, I said, finished healing his injuries. That's ridiculous. You're 12. He sat up on the table, his eyes shocked. I'm a jounin. If you hadn't noticed, as soon as this team gets broken up, I'm to be sent out on potentially suicide missions. On top of that, Hinata-chan is my soulmate. I picked up more than whiskers from Kyuubi. I know how to recognize my future mate. What do you have to say for yourself? You don't let yourself get close to anyone. Noticing how loud I was, I bit my tongue while Sasuke came up with a reply, also quieting. If you hadn't noticed, everyone I've gotten close to is dead, he growled. I glared at him. So what am I? I was there with you, Sasuke, I said quietly. We were training and I bought you ramen. Or don't you remember? I was with you the first time you saw Fugaku and Terra. I was next to you when you saw the balance of Konoha. I've trained with you and sparred with you for years. If everyone you've cared for is dead, what does that say about me? I left Sasuke in the kitchen, walking to my room without looking back once. Landing on my blankets, thoughts of the last Sasuke came rushing into my mind. Did you see what's inside my heart, Sasuke? If you saw what I saw, save all of your hate for me. I'm the only person who can take it. When we fight, both of us will die. I froze, my thoughts stopping the memories. I forced myself to fall asleep, focusing on tomorrow. I didn't sleep well, but I never expected to. I woke up first and woke Sakura up, leaving her to wake up the others as I went looking for Sasuke. Not finding him in the house, I dashed to the clearing we'd been using for training. Seeing him lying on the grass surrounded by small craters and fallen trees, I smiled. It was Sasuke to spend all night training this time. Sasuke, wake up, I said, shaking him. When he refused to wake up, I frowned, seeing how little chakra he had left. It wasn't enough to be dangerous, but it could endanger the mission. Thoughts aside, I did another chakra exchange. He woke up as the chakra entire his system jerking him awake. I held him down until his body accepted my chakra, then released him, sitting down as my skin flushed red. Glancing down at his healing scrapes, Sasuke flexed his muscles and noticed that nothing hurt. "What did you do?" he asked. "Medical ninjutsu I created. I'm going to make it a kinjutsu as soon as we get back," I decided, feeling my own muscles slow before Kyuubi healed them. "Why?" "It worked really well." "Yeah, but it can kill the user." "Not me, a normal person," I said, calming the confused panic that rose in Sasuke's eye for just a moment. "If I had your or Sakura's chakra reserves, that jutsu would have killed me." "What's it called?" Sasuke said, glancing at me. "Chakra exchange. I transplanted my chakra into your coils." "Very easy but dangerous for you." "Why?" he asked, the suspicion narrowing his black eyes fractionally. "Kyuubi. If I gave you any of his chakra by mistake, your body would reject it and fight it, treating it like an infection. That wouldn't be a problem except for the fact that demonic chakra is much more potent than human chakra. It would take over in a matter of minutes and dissolve your body from the inside out." "Any questions?" "Seriously?" "No," I smiled before taking up a serious facade. "It probably wouldn't dissolve your body. Just give you a very painful, lasting death. But that's not important, I'm good at separating the chakras." Sasuke didn't look convinced. I chuckled before getting serious again. "Everyone else is leaving, we need to." "Oh no," I said, feeling the kunai I'd given to Inari thrown. "What is it?" "Trouble at the house. Get to the bridge as fast as you can, I'll take care of Inari and Tsunami." "Sakura isn't strong enough to really battle with Haku," I said, closing my eyes. I put my mask on quickly, ready to disembowel some thugs. I stayed long enough to hear a confirmation, but no longer opening my eyes to the living room. I think I heard someone, and the man's next words were cut off as I slit his throat. I dashed behind his body and took him down. I took them to the front lawn and burned them with a quick but powerful fire jutsu. Seeing Inari staring at me with wide eyes, I saluted. "Sorry, I can't stay. If there's trouble here," I was cut off, my Sakura's kunai thrown. "Get the villagers, meet me at the bridge." Once again, I closed my eyes, opening them to a battle. Kakashi and Zabuza were fighting, each seeming to give it their all. Haku was still hiding in the trees, and Sasuke had not yet arrived. "Sasuke?" Sakura asked. "On his way." I needed to go back to the house. "Don't worry, Tazuna. Inari and Tsunami are fine. I need to help Kakashi Kuchio's no jutsu," I shouted. Kazura, Koyuki and Kyuubi appeared in a puff of smoke. "Sorry, Q, need a little chakra," I said, putting a hand on his leg. He shrunk and my body converted the demonic chakra into usable chakra. Koyuki, Kazura, defend Tazuna with Sakura. Q, we're going to fight Zabuza. Don't kill him. That ruins half the fun, Kyuubi complained, running with me towards Zabuza and Kakashi. Hey Kakashi! Sorry we're late. Momochi, Zabuza. I thought the hunter Nin killed you, I said, chuckling. Zabuza growled. Takes more than a few Senbon to kill me, he insisted. I put a hand on my katana, drawing it in a fluid motion. How about a katana? Think that'll work, Kakashi? I felt Sasuke arrive, skidding to a stop as Haku leapt out to meet him. Let's find out, he said, Sharingan glaring. I nodded, activating Akuma no Mi. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. I shouted through my mask. Zabuza! When you see your friends in hell, tell them Kiroi Kitsune says hi, I smirked, knowing this was going to be a short battle. I knelt silent as Gato began his victory monologue. Kakashi stood at my side breathing deeply from the fight. He and Zabuza did go full out. I got a workout. It's a good thing you're so vulnerable now, Momochi. I was planning on killing you anyway, he chuckled. Haku was safely out of the way, knocked unconscious by Sasuke during their match. But I had never expected to see the Kiroi Kitsune. I never heard you were a team player. Areguma Pyrai Suki Yujito, I'm never by myself if that's what you mean, I shrugged, standing. But a bunch of genin? Your standards are lowering, my friend, he laughed. In a flash I had a kunai at his throat. His bodyguards moved towards me before falling to the ground, each slashed by Zabuza's decapitating blade held in my right hand. I heard Zabuza complain about me taking his sword, cracking his neck as Kakashi helped him to stand. Don't insult my team. You miscalculated, Gato, I whispered in his ear. I dragged him through the Hiraishin, locking onto Kakashi's kunai. Still holding the short man, I passed Zabuza's sword to its owner. I told you that you could kill him, I said, releasing the man. Zabuza grinned under his bandages. Run, little man, he growled. Gato jumped and ran towards Tazuna, only to have Haku jump up and slash a kunai across his chest. The man fell back. You couldn't let me have one? Zabuza asked Haku. The girl only grinned at the now bleeding man. I turned away as the man began to scream, turning towards his army of thugs. As for you, I shouted. Anyone brave or stupid I don't judge enough to face me? No? Not one person? Okay, then Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. I shouted, surrounding the army with clones. Try not to get too much blood on the bridge, I said. Each of my clones grinned sadistically, their blue eyes turning red as they activated demon eyes. They stored their kunai and rushed the thugs, striking Tenketsu instead of slashing their enemy. I watched as my clones did the work, turning to Zabuza and Kakashi, both looking at me with wide eyes. What? Naruto! You're scaring the Jounin! Sakura yelled from the other side of the bridge, walking towards us. Kazura and Koyuki walked at her flanks, Tazuna close behind. I smiled as Sasuke and Haku, flecked with blood, joined the group. I took off my mask and smiled sheepishly towards the Jounin. Sorry, I said, scratching the back of my head. Zabuza laughed, turning towards Haku and giving her a proud nod. The girl beamed and her smile lost its bloodthirst, becoming gentler and sweeter. Kakashi rolled his eyes before pulling his Hitayate back over Obito's eye, turning to Tazuna. I don't think you'll have any trouble, Kakashi said, glancing at the thugs my clones had taken care of. Tazuna nodded, messing up my hair again. Nice work, kid, he chuckled. I ducked from his hand, grimacing. Stupid chakra, I muttered. Glancing up, I saw Sakura looking at me confused. Q's chakra makes me grow slower. I'll probably be short for the next 2 or 3 years. Either way, I think this mission is over. Yeah. When we get back to Konoha, this will be recorded as an A rank, and when Wave recovers, I expect that we'll be paid for it, Kakashi said pointedly to Tazuna. He nodded, smiling sheepishly. Zabuza, Haku, you two should come back with us to Konoha, I suggested. Sandame is smart, he'll trust my word, but he'll also want to meet you. The two nodded and I smiled as Inari and the villagers ran up. We missed it? I heard Inari shout from the other side of the bridge. I shrugged and followed my kunai to him. Just barely. 10 more minutes and you would have seen everything. What's important is that Gato is dead and his thugs are either dead or paralyzed. The paralysis will wear off after a few hours, so I think you should decide what to do with them before that, I said, pointing at the hired hands. Oh yeah. I need the 2 kunai I gave to you and your mother. Yeah, she thought you might, he said, chuckling, holding up 2 Hiraishin kunai. I smiled and took them back, resealing them. Do you have to leave already? Yeah, I said, looking back at Team 7. If I don't go with them, the Hokage would be disappointed. You're pretty close to Hokage-sama, aren't you? Inari asked, glancing at my team laughing together. He's like my Ojaizen. He let Kakashi adopt me, and I'm pretty sure he's been pulling strings to make sure I'm safe when I'm in Konoha. I've been surrounded by Umbu for most of my life. They only stopped when I became an official elite jounin, I explained, thinking fondly of the professor. I yawned and stretched as Sakura ran towards me. Naruto-sensei, we're getting ready to leave, she reported. Inari looked a little surprised at the suffix, but I waved him off. I'm coming, I just want to say goodbye. I'll be back as soon as I can, Inari. Believe it, I chuckled. Inari nodded, trying not to look sad. I messed up his hair and gave him a smile. Be a hero, Inari. Your country needs one, I said, walking back to the group. Walking away, I heard Inari's voice, quiet and calm. They already have one. I smiled. Once again, Tazuna and the villagers came up with a name, and the Great Naruto Bridge was complete. Chapter 23. Kitsune. In Konoha, the Hokage's office was very crowded. Team 7 was gathered in the middle, Haku and Zabuza close to me. The Hokage sat at his desk, not saying a word, as he studied the two missing nin. The Umbu beside him looked tense, and I struggled against a laugh as their hands twitched towards their swords. Worst of all, Danzo stood in between the elders, directly behind Hiruzen. The silence thickened as they all studied the mask hiding my face. Flashback at the village gates when Naruto. Kakashi called behind me. What's up? I squinted, the rising sun in my eyes. We're almost at Konoha, are you sure about the mask? He said, staring pointedly at the mask I had just unsealed. Of course I'm sure. I said I was going to tell the village when the mission was over. Guess what? The mission's over, and I brought home a couple of missing nin. I'm sure the council will want some explanation as to why we didn't fight. Kyuroi Kitsune is a more known name than Namikaze Uzumaki Naruto, I reasoned. Sasuke sighed and Sakura shrugged. After a few more minutes of walking, we reached the gates. Striding towards the guard, I watched as the Chunin nearly fell out of his chair, recognizing me. I looked back at everyone else. Yes, you do have that effect on people, Haku answered before I had a chance to ask. I sighed and looked back at the man not touching my mask. You. Tell the Hokage Danzo and the Ninja Council to get their asses to the Hokage's office. I know where it is, I'll meet them there. Johnny, I said, shining into the village close to the gates. I heard Sakura report that Team 7 had returned from a successful mission, apologizing for the Kyuroi Kitsune's rudeness. I chuckled as the Chunin nearly fainted, waving them all and without a glance to Zabuza or Haku. End flashback. Why are you here? NaruHina asked warily. I shrugged, lowering my voice. I wa Akiri aim Kumo Sunataki Tani Ishiyam Yuki and dozens of other villages and countries later. You'd think people would stop asking things like why are you here and what do you want? I don't usually answer that type of question. Good start, Shikaku-san. Try again, I smiled behind my mask, trying not to let the humor into my voice. Shikaku thought before glancing around me. Where is Naruto? He asked. I nodded, smiling. And that is why you are Jounin Commander, I said, letting my smile color my voice. There is something I need everyone in this room to know about. You are not under any circumstances allowed to reveal this information with anyone unless I give you permission to do so. If I find out that you have, I will personally deliver your punishment. You may leave now if you don't want the temptation. This is highly sensitive information which as of right now only 13 people in the world know, 6 of them being in this room. Nobody left. Glancing around the room, Shikaku cleared his throat. What did you want to tell us? He asked, his eyes catching the Namikaze ring on my finger. I stared him down, forcing him quiet. My identity. If my real name escapes this room at this point in time, I can guarantee that Iwa and Kyuubi will get over their differences and forge an alliance so that they can attack Konoha, probably allied with the Yondaime Kazekage. Why would they attack us? We didn't do anything to Kyuubi, and we haven't touched Suna or Iwa since the last war. Inoichi asked, his eyes wide with indignation. Shikaku shook his head. Unknowingly and indirectly we have invaded them, he said, making Inoichi turn on him. It was not ordered by anyone in the Leaf, Inoichi. Take off the mask, Naruto. The inevitable gasps filled the room. Sasuke scoffed, rolling his eyes, while Haku and Sakura laughed with each other. I moved my hand to my mask and took off the yellow mask. Shikaku nodded, a little smug. You always were sharp, Shikaku-san. You saw the ring, right? I said, holding up my right hand as the scarred ninja nodded. I coughed, turning to everyone else. Okay, yes, I admit it. I am the Kuroi Kitsune Senin and Namikaze Uzumaki Naruto. I meant to continue dramatically, but I took one look at Danzo's bandaged face and cracked up. When I straightened, I wiped a tear from my eye. Danzo, you should see your face. Okay, matters at hand, I said, smiling. The smile disappeared when Danzo leaned towards Hiruzen, whispering in his ear. With my hearing, I heard every word. See what I told you? The boy was meant to be a weapon from day one. I didn't influence any aspect of his life, and he still grew to be a tool, he smiled smugly. Oi, Danzo! I can hear every single word you're saying, I shouted. I calmed down, glancing at the other ninjas who had not heard a word. Danzo is boasting about how perfect a weapon I've become without his influence. Too bad you have emotions, Kakashi said sarcastically, winking his visible eye. I shrugged. If only, right? I chuckled, not looking behind me. There is a reason why I never wanted to be rude, Danzo. You treat people like chess pieces on your political chessboard. You dehumanize people, I said coldly. Kuchios no Jutsu, I muttered. Having been privy to my thoughts, Kyuubi appeared the size of a normal fox. I put a hand on his head and sealed away the chakra he could not control before he could try to destroy something driven by his chakra. The shinobi in front of me stepped back as one, only Team 7 Haku and Zabuza staying in place. Sakura even scoffed at the reaction, ignoring her own initial response to Kyuubi's thrashing tales. Yes, Kyuubi no Kitsune is standing in the Hokage's office. He is not doing any damage, not killing or hurting anyone, and has been doing that each time I've summoned him unless I specifically tell him to do so, I said, watching Kyu sit down, releasing a low growl. Danzo, he snarled. If I didn't have a debt to this village, I'd kill you where you stand. The room was silent until Inoichi nodded at the fox. It's strange seeing you outside of Naruto's mindscape, he mused, walking out of the huddle and towards Kyuubi, many council members trying to stop him. Quiet, Chusa. He and Naruto are good friends. Kyuubi wouldn't try anything if he thought Naruto or his friends may be injured, he said, brushing off the Akimichi's warnings. Yamanaka Kyuubi nodded at the blonde ninja. I turned to the council, blocking out Kyuubi's mind as he and Inoichi talked like old friends. I need to address this council. That is why you are here. I call a council meeting in 40 minutes to discuss the futures of missing Nin Momochi, Zabuza, and Yuki Haku, I announced. Granted, Hiruzen said, nodding. Where will they stay for the duration of the meeting? At my house. I need to pick up a few things before the meeting, I replied, nodding at my Kenjutsu teacher and medical ninjutsu student. Also, I request for the meeting to be given top priority status. We are talking about 2 human lives that shouldn't have to wait for their answer. Granted. The council shall meet in the council room at noon, the professor announced. The council members all left, getting ready for the meeting and going to tell the clan heads that weren't there. Team 7, congrats on your first real mission, I said, smiling at my team. I'm giving you 2 days off. Don't waste it. Dismissed, I ordered. The 2 genin smiled and walked out of the office. Hiruzuno Jisen, I have a mission request. Didn't you just give your team a chance to relax? You just came back from a mission. This is important. I'd like to be allowed to leave Konoha. I'd like to find an old student of yours. Which one? Senju Tsunade, I answered seriously. Sakura has immense potential as a medical kunoichi. I can teach her everything that Tsunade can, but I can't give her the same relationship from student to master. Sakura needs someone other than me to turn to when things don't go her way. I'd also like to find Jiraiya. He's beginning to poke around trying to get information on me. I need to make sure he knows I support Konoha. I'll think about it. Go get ready for the meeting, it's nearly 10, he advised, standing from his desk. I nodded and turned to Zabuza and Haku. Kakashi already gone. Let's get going. The Namikaze Manor is a little far from here in the Noble District, I said, grimacing as Zabuza chuckled. Doing well for yourself, Kitsune? It's an inheritance, and I told you to call me Naruto, I grumbled. Haku smiled serenely as I lead her and laughing swordsman out of the office and further into Konoha. I got the last laugh when Zabuza's eyes widened when we entered the richer parts of Konoha. This is where the higher clans lived along with a number of rich merchant families. Walking the route towards my home, I waved to everyone I knew. Passing the mostly abandoned Uchiha compound, I stepped inside to talk to Tori, the current clan head of the remains of Uchiha. After a reunion with Sasuke, she and her children moved back into the Uchiha compound, taking one of the smaller, cozier homes as their own. Sasuke had declined her invitation to move in with her, staying in Kakashi's apartment. Skipping the chit-chat, I told her about the meeting and introduced her to Zabuza and Haku. Tori-chan, I don't really want to play the politics card. Namikaze and Uchiha were allied in the past, blah blah blah, but I'd really appreciate it if you stay open-minded to what I'll say, I said genuinely. Tori thought about it for a while before nodding. I will. Either way, you have good judgment. If you say something and it makes sense, I'll agree with it. Thank you, Tori-chan. By Fugaku-kun, by Tara-chan. I called into the house. The twins, now 3 years old, ran out and gave me a hug before dashing back into the house playing ninja. I'll see you at the meeting, Tori-chan, I said, smiling as I lead Zabuza and Haku out of the compound and further down the street, stopping at the Namikaze gates. This is us, I announced, biting my thumb and opening the blood seal. Zabuza looked into the compound and whistled. My father was the only Namikaze left in Konoha when I was born. The whole compound and the wealth of the clan belongs to me according to the documents I found in my father's desk. The wealth of the clan, pretty important sounding, Zabuza commented, glancing at the houses as we passed each, heading towards the manor. Coming into sight of it, I pointed at it. It is. All of the clan business, money, jutsu, and appearance is my responsibility. No pressure or anything, I said, rolling my eyes as I opened the front door and stood to the side, letting the two missing nin in first. That would have worked if they hadn't paused at the doorway. It's a house, it won't bite, I promised. You need to have a party, Haku breathed, walking into the secondary living room. This was the room designed for guests of the clan head. Nobody spent any time in this room unless they were trying to impress someone. Ignore this room. This is where guests of the clan head have tea or something like that. I hate politics, I said, leading them to the primary living room. Okay, the kitchen is through that door if you get hungry. The fridge and shelves are stocked, just don't eat all my food. You can explore the house, but touch the rooms with Kyuubi drawn onto the door and I will kill you, I said, thinking about my bedroom and my father's study, the door to the Namikaze clan records. The two nodded and I smiled. Stay here for a minute, I need to get some papers from my dad's office. I was about to leave the room when I glanced at Zabuza's sword. Actually, I need to establish some rules. No jutsu sword fights or training inside or close to any of the houses. If you get bored or want to train, go out the front door and to the training ground on your left. That is the field I use, so it's already set up. I nodded to myself and walked down the hall to my father's office, the door glowing with a golden fox with 9 tails. I opened the door and sat at the desk, opening the filing cabinet and digging through the files for the right papers. Finding them, I left the office and found a note on my coffee table in the living room. Got bored, went training. By the way, where do you keep your gauze? Zabuza. I grabbed a roll of gauze with instructions for a weak cauterizing jutsu that I wanted Haku to learn anyway. I tied the 2 into a bundle and threw it hard from my front lawn. I didn't move until I heard Zabuza exclaim in surprise and then in pain. I could hear Haku's laugh from the main gates. Chapter 24, Konoha's Council. I stopped at the memorial stone on my way to the council meeting. 10 minutes later, I dragged Kakashi through the door, the latter shouting in protest. Raising my voice over the copy nin, I apologized for our lateness. Sorry, I knew Kakashi would be delayed. Not wanting this meeting to be over long, I thought I'd bring Kakashi along. Half the council chuckled under their breath. Looking around the room, I was reminded of the 5 Kage summit. Every council member sat at a long table shaped like a horseshoe. There were 15 seats on the official council, 12 ninjas and 3 civilians. Hiruzen and Danzo sat inside the horseshoe. Neither had a vote, they were there to witness. Each ninja clan head was backed by a clan council member. The civilians each had their spouse or child with them. Releasing Kakashi, I took my own seat. Just as the clans were separated into upper and lower levels, as was the council. The founding clans of Konoha, the Senju Uchiha and Namikaze, sat in the center directly across from the Hokage. They were in the best position to listen and be heard by the other clans. The Senju seat was empty, leaving me sitting beside Tori with a chair in between us. Sitting down at my seat, I smiled to her. She waved back, smiling before turning to talk to Sum, who sat to her left. I did a head count, recognizing the ninja on the council. At the north end, my far right, sat a civilian. He was followed by the empty Kurama seat. Then there was a Kimichi Chusa sitting beside Yamanaka Inoichi. Kakashi sat in between Inoichi and Hayashi, who was seated at my right. After me was the empty Senju chair before the Uchiha space occupied by Tori. Inuzuka Utsum was at Tori's left, followed by Nara Shikaku. Sarutobi Asuma was beside Shikaku, Aburame Shibito at his left. 2 civilians sat in the next 2 chairs, conversing with the shinobi easily. Hiruzen called for silence and nodded at me to begin. Before I explain my thoughts to this council, I'm afraid that you must listen through a little backstory. Today my Genin team came back from what was assigned as a C-rank mission. It turned A rank when we encountered Momochi Zabuza, also known as the Demon of the Bloody Mist, who was hired to assassinate the man that Team 7 was guarding. Recognizing my mask as the Kiroi Kitsune, he stopped his assault before it started. I took the time to talk to him and convince him into leaving Tazuna, the man we were hired to protect, alone. He agreed and stayed with us for the duration of the mission. I called this mission because I'd like to petition the council for Konoha citizenship for both Zabuza and his student Haku. Why do you feel so obligated to help a man that, as you just said, threatened your mission? Wouldn't it be better to send him back to Kiri and let their council deal with him? Chusa asked. Kakashi shook his head. I'm familiar with both Zabuza's and his students' backgrounds. You are all aware of the bloodline purges that took place in the Hidden Mist. Zabuza was declared a missing nin because he didn't believe in killing people because of their lineage. Haku, his student, was a victim of those purges. Her mother was of the Yuki clan, if I'm not mistaken, with the Kekai Genkai ability to use ice techniques. When Haku's father learned of their abilities, he murdered Haku's mother. He would have killed Haku as well if her bloodline limit had activated and saved her, even though the self-defense took her father's life. She was found by Zabuza and he took her in and trained her. That may answer Chusa's second question, but it fails to satisfy the first. Why should we help someone who has been our enemy in the past? Sum said, reminding me of why I hated politics. Every word came back to haunt you. This man was never our enemy. The life of a missing nin is hard. You find work where you can get it, you don't ask questions. If something goes wrong, the world looks at you with contempt and derision because you are a broken tool as far as they care. Let me answer your question with one of my own, Sum. If you see a dog with a broken leg, would you shut the door in its face? Send it back to the one that hurt it? The demon of the bloody mist is hardly an injured dog, Sum laughed darkly. Is he? Have you ever wondered where your next meal is coming from? Worried if the hunter nin are going to find your camp? That type of anxiety is crippling, and unlike a broken bone, it doesn't always mend with time. You are getting off topic, Naruto Shikaku said, leaning back in his chair. Sum and Chusa bring up a good point, even if they aren't the clearest delivering it. What makes you so sure that we can trust this man? He's turned on one village. What makes Konoha so different for him? I thought about my reply, not wanting to throw Sum a bone. I've lived for a year outside of Konoha's walls. Outside of protection, all rules and regulations thrown out the window. I've seen and done things that would terrify a third of this council. By all definitions, I should have been declared a missing nin. What makes you so sure you can trust me? I've been as impartial as I can to the various nations. What makes this council think they deserve the same treatment? You're a Konoha nin, Sum shouted. I shrugged. Why am I a Konoha nin? Why does the council believe I deserve to wear this attire? There was no reply. What makes this council believe that I'm so different from these two ninja? More importantly, why does this council believe that they're so different from these two ninja? I finished quietly, leaning forward so I could see everyone. You sound attached to the two, Shikaku noted. Have you met them before this mission? Yes, I answered truthfully. Aragima and I had just left Cloud when 24 Kumonin ambushed us, believing that we were trying to kidnap their two-tailed Jinchuriki ni Yujito and Bisama. We fought and Aragima was badly wounded. I knocked out the rest of their ninjas with a chakra pulse, a skill I learned while traveling, and went to heal Aragima when I heard Haku laughing in the trees. She and Zabuza came out and we talked. After learning who I was, Kiroi Kitsune, he offered to train me in Kenjutsu. I agreed and he taught me for 6 weeks. We left the two in grass. So you want to help an old friend? Torai asked. Yes and no. Konoha has been weakening over the past few years. Don't deny it, Danzo. You've watched your precious root getting killed. My request is that you allow Haku and Zabuza to join Konoha's ranks. Monitor them if you want, let them start slow to test their loyalty, but let them eventually come back. They are both highly skilled in a tribute Kakashi can vouch for. Kakashi nodded when most of the council looked his way. Asumo lit another cigarette. If they're so highly skilled, what makes you think they won't turn on us and cripple us more? He said, examining one of his chakra blades in the light. The fact that Haku is one of the people I count as my friends, and the fact that Zabuza knows my Kenjutsu beats his. He won't challenge Konoha even if he remains a missing nin as long as I'm allied with you. Also, he wouldn't turn down a chance for Haku to have a reasonably normal life, something she's never had. Don't misinterpret me, threaten Haku, and I will join him as he hunts you down. You seem confident threatening the council, Danzo said, narrowing his eyes. I was about to say something in reply when Aburame Shibito answered for me. Naruto is a 12-year-old jounin, Danzo-sama. I'm inclined to believe he's strong enough to back his words. He also seems a good judge of character. If he thinks Zabuza will seek retribution, he probably will, Shino's father said in a monotone. I nodded and looked around the council. I'm well aware of who is opposed to this request. I'd like to bring out one more point before we vote. What is it now? Hayashi sighed. I smiled knowing that he wasn't going to go against my vote in the long run. As sole inheritor of the Namikaze clan, I have access to my clan's financial records. I'm not going to say names, but I will say that a number of the people of this council and the clans they watch over have built up substantial debts to my clan. I'd probably be inclined to lessen or forget the debts of those who keep an open mind, I said, watching Sumchusa and one of the civilians fume. I noticed that Inoichi looked a little nervous, but Tori shrugged, not caring about the debts of the dead. She smiled at me and nodded. I smiled in return, knowing that I had her vote. Are we ready for a vote? Each member battled against their judgment until each nodded. I nodded at the civilian in the north end. Shrina no, he shook his head slowly. Akimichi no Chusa said adamantly. I shrugged. Yamanaka yes. Hataki yes. Hyuga yes. Namikaze of course. Uchiha yes. Inuzuka yes, some growled, glaring at me. Nara yes. Sarutobi no. Aburame yes. Taku no. Onoi yes. Danzo counted up the votes and grimaced angrily before nodding to the Hokage, who smiled briefly. Request for Konoha citizenship for Momochi Zabuza and Yuki Haku granted by Konoha's Council of Clans. Dis not quite Hokage-sama, I said apologetically. The council glared at me, not wanting to spend more time in this room. What is it, Naruto? He asked patiently. I smirked, recognizing the expression relief at delaying the inevitable paperwork. I'd like to announce 2 things to the council before we break. The first is that my identity is no longer a matter of secrecy. Tell anyone you want, the more the merrier. The second is news of my engagement. Her father and I have already decided to wait until after she is promoted to Chunin, I announced. Most of the council looked a little shocked watching a 12-year-old jounin say he's engaged. Who are you marrying, and when can I tell her congratulations? Torai asked, the first to recover. Hayashi, much to my relief, took pity. He's marrying my eldest daughter, Hyuga Hinata. Have you told her yet, Naruto? He asked, turning to me. Did I mention I've been in Wave for the past 2 weeks? And that I just got back today? And then had to come here? I asked the question, somewhat rhetorical and somewhat sarcastic. So? I want to congratulate her. Torai shouted. I winced before remembering that she didn't get to have her white wedding, her children's father acting as my spy. Ooh, do you think she'll let me help plan her wedding? She went on. After a while I began to tone her out. Hey Tori? Where are Fugaku and Tara? I asked, noticing the lack of twins. Torai nodded, her eyes lighting up. They're with Hinata. Let's go. You need to propose. She shouted, dragging me by the wrist. I briefly wondered if all kunoichi suffered from dual personalities.
Thank you for your views, likes, subscriptions, and overall support of my ongoing efforts to bring great content to all of you. Check out my Patreon for more mature fanfiction. The link is in the description and like everywhere on my channel.